Well, I mean,
let me finish real quick.
all I could really say is
hold on. I see the statement. Go ahead, Rob.
Right. If me and Sarah both own a business and Sarah's a billionaire and I'm just starting out and I only have $100,000 and there are business programs designed to help poor business owners, why should Sarah be prioritized over me just because she's a woman?
All right. Okay. I would say that because the mechanisms of funding and the people all the way down through the line of the different levels of government who create that funding don't always send it where it needs to go, right? So you have to target it to make sure it gets to those places.
But you're not targeting it to make sure it gets to those places if it's not based on just the financial need, if it's based on other factors. Again, this is
Rob,
a mistake.
do you think black people are disproportionately poor in the United States?
Sure. And so let's help poor people, not black people.
Well, Republicans don't want to do that either, so we have to create more targeted policies.
It's irrelevant.
What FG said is
it's irrelevant. Republicans don't want to help poor people anyway. Yeah, good point.
That's not true.
Right, and Democrats want to kill babies.
It is true.
Do you think it matters why they're disproportionately poor?
No.
Okay, well then that's where we're going to disagree.
Not in the sense. So just to be clear, if there's a case of historical discrimination, the black people that exist today are entitled to certain funds that white people that are in the same financial situation aren't.
Well, if their parents didn't have access to certain things, doesn't it make sense to potentially try to alleviate the impact of that?
Why is that everybody else's
parents or
problem?
grandparents? Why does that not matter? Why does it not matter if somebody like was?
Why? Because that's what a parent does. A parent is specifically makes the opportunity for their child. It is up to the parent to determine what that child's life is going to be in the future, continue, and so on and so forth. Every opportunity granted to my own children is on the sweat of my own fucking back. And I'm going to do that to make sure that they have those opportunities. I bust my ass to do so.
And the biggest disadvantage.
I agree.
Your children's opportunities depend on you. You either sacrifice and make the shit happen, or it doesn't happen.
And so why are black parents less likely to do that?
Because
single parent, you mean?
I'm a
you mean single parents or black parents?
I'm a single parent. This bullshit.
Could be anything, right? Could be
right. You mean single parents, black parents? Which one do you mean? Because there's a lot of there's a lot of overlap there. But which one are you talking about? Single parents is the biggest. Single mother parents is the biggest
poverty. Single parents are fine if they're not in poverty.
Sorry,
it's unfortunate, but that's truth, I think.
Well, the problem, Ryan, is that you see a discrepancy, and you even said equity has to do with the quality of outcomes. The problem is you see
quality of opportunity of outcome is what I said. To be clear, it's a different thing, right? It is a different thing.
All right. You see disparate outcomes, and you say, therefore racism, therefore historical injustice. It may be many other things. For example, you want to know
but
why?
It's obvious. It's so obvious. Like, we really think there's anything else that explains all of the racial discrepancies we see?
Yes, single parent households.
What makes them more likely to have single parent households then?
Please, let me finish. I'll explain what makes it more likely.
What makes their culture different?
The war on poverty incentivized single motherhood in the black community. It was said, there was a commission that a Democrat came out in 1960 that said it was a crisis that 25% of blacks were born out of wedlock. Now that number is 75% because we incentivized single motherhood. That's why.
How come black people were disproportionately impacted by that?
Because they were the ones that were specifically targeted. The policy was supposedly to, quote, help black people, but like LBJ said, we're going to have these N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years because the plan was to make them reliant on the government because the truth is people like
they were getting material benefit from voting Democrat.
The truth is people like LBJ were worried that if you allowed
that's material benefit they needed that they weren't getting from the Republican Party, right?
No, let me finish. The truth is that people like LBJ were worried that if you allowed blacks to compete in a system where they didn't get special advantages or were reliant on the government, that they would start out-competing whites in certain ways. So what they did instead was they said, we will make them reliant on the government. Therefore, they will never continue to advance.
And black people fell for it, is what you're saying.
That's exactly right. And any race would.
Yeah.
Yes. If you incentivize people not working and not bettering
themselves. So how come they haven't figured it out yet?
Many have. Thomas Sowell talks specifically about, he remembers being a young black child when you had government agents that were knocking on doors.
Most of the black community, they just don't get what Rob's diagnosed to, right?
They would knock on doors and say, if there wasn't a man in the house.
Most of the black community just doesn't understand what you're getting at, right? They just don't understand what you're pointing to.
That is correct. Would you?
Why?
If I offered you,
why don't they understand it?
If I offered you government money to stay at home, would you take it?
What's wrong with them? Why don't they understand what you're saying?
Because any person, it's not specific to race, any person, if they're offered free money to not better themselves, would probably
But everyone can do that. Everyone can get welfare.
But
black people aren't the ones who have access to welfare.
There was more offered and more rhetoric and energy put into offering it to the black community. Now, again, we could look at disparate outcomes, and like you just want to claim racism. For example, why do blacks make up 13% of the population but commit more than 50% of homicides?
I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's like the specific percentage of those 13%. It's like 0.5% or something of black people who actually do violent crimes. But
sure,
people say 1350 because they're racist usually.
No, it's not because racist. When you say that it's racist, it's actually what you're doing is racist.
Well, if you're assigning 50% of violent crime to black people instead of the 0.5% of the black population who are actually doing that violent crime, I think that you are actually doing a racist.
Oh, then are you being racist when you talk about poor people and talk about blacks being disproportionately poor? Shouldn't you instead be focused on the exact percentage of poor black people? No, you just say poor people.
When I say black people are disproportionately poor, I'm pointing to past racist policies that made it more likely that they would become poor.
I'm saying black people are disproportionately committing murders. If it's not racist when you make those disproportionate arguments, then it's not racist.
I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying black people aren't doing that. I agree. Black people commit more crime, disproportionately. I agree. But I think it's because of these historic racist policies. Yeah.
But you have no evidence to show that.
I think there's overwhelming evidence to demonstrate.
Okay, so explain to me how Jim Crow makes a black guy today murder someone.
So, do you think people in poverty are more or less likely to commit crime than people not in poverty?
People in poverty are more likely to commit crime in general.
Okay, do you think black people are more likely to be in poverty because of historic racist policies, or do you think there's something else?
I think that there's vastly different reasons other than just historic racist
even
policies.
If we went into the welfare stuff that you talked about, that would just be your own framing of what you're pointing to and identifying as what we would call systemic racism, which is policies that would be targeting and hurting black people, even if I agreed with your characterization of those policies.
It's racist if you give them money, and it's racist if you don't. Convenient. And it's
racist if you're targeting groups to hurt them, right? And you're using whatever nefarious policy you think you're giving, you say you're giving them money, so you're actually helping them, blah blah blah, or you're actually hurting them, but you're trying to help them.
It sums up your entire worldview, right? Like no matter what we do, we could just say racism, and that's one of the reasons that things are so bad. Now we can
maybe there was a lot of racism. What if that's the case? What if America just was a really fucking racist place?
And
it's not. We can all acknowledge that, right? And a lot of those people, a lot of those really racist people, they're still around, right?
Sure. A lot of them are black. A lot of them are Hispanic.
Okay. I'm not talking about those people. Okay. I'm sure, yeah. People you characterize as racist. I know we disagree about whether or not that's racism. I agree it's prejudice. I agree it's bad. I condemn anti-white prejudice. Hey, white people, I think being prejudiced against you is bad. Do you feel better? Okay. White people, I want all the white people, all the white victims to know, I think being prejudiced against you guys is bad. I just want to be clear so no one here is victimized by Ryan Radical Coder. I think being racist or prejudiced against white people is bad, okay? Do you feel better?
Okay, if poverty is the reason that they're committing homicide, then are there discrepancy in outcomes between white people that are in the same poverty line as black people and how many homicides they commit?
Do you think that poverty is the only thing?
No, but that's what you're
saying.
And
population density, right?
Okay, that would be another and. So
okay, so do you think
it's a poor white person that lives in like an inner city? Are they as likely to commit homicide as a poor black person that lives in the inner city?
They're going to be closer. Yeah, they're going to be closer to those numbers. Yeah. I mean, you're asserting they're not?
I'm saying I'd like to see the data.
Neither of us have the data, right? Neither of us have that data right here, so we can. We're speculating.
So what we can see is, like another thing that you would say is like, well, blacks are most likely to commit murders against their own race, which is true. Whites against, all right, okay. But did you know that when
because there's a bunch of them living near each other, right?
Okay,
in like population density areas.
Okay, but would you know that when it comes to cross racial murders in every group, that blacks are the most likely to commit other than the own race? In fact, according to the data that I looked at, I think from 2018 was the last FBI data I could find. The only group you would say white people are the victim. Let me rephrase this. Homicide victims that are white are most likely to be killed by white people, correct?
Yeah, they're more likely to be near white people.
Homicide victims that are black are most likely to be killed by black people, right?
Yes.
Homicide victims that are Hispanic are most likely to be killed by Hispanics, right?
People are most likely to be have crimes against people, or tend to be people tend to commit crimes against people around them, right?
Asian people that are victims of homicide are most likely to have the homicide committed by an Asian, right? Listen to the question, Ryan. Asian people that are victims of homicide are most likely to be killed by Asians, right?
Probably.
No, it's blacks.
Okay, and what's your point?
Oh, well, if it's just about living in close proximity and therefore...
So what's the problem? What's causing that? Why?
There could be a litany of reasons, but the problem is
like
that
what?
You just see
what's
a disparity. There could be all kinds of things. It could be culture.
Okay, name one.
Because, people like you make excuses for
why is there culture like that? Because I'm making it okay for black people to commit crimes.
Incentivize victimhood.
I'm making it okay for black people to commit crimes.
People like you that have had not you yourself, but people that share your beliefs.
You don't actually believe this.
Of course I do. I absolutely believe that the victimhood culture.
You think that my opinions about racism in the United States are making it more likely for black people to kill Asians?
Ryan, I think people in
you guys how fucking stupid that sounds, right?
Please let me finish. I think people in influential positions that share your beliefs are making it.
I have 800 subs. I'm not almost 800 subs.
You're a pissant that no one gives a fuck what you say, but it's people like you that share your beliefs that have power. They're the ones that are embracing this victimhood culture that's self-fulfilling prophecy, which means that people never take personal agency, and it means that these things are perpetuated. Yes, that's
that black people, if you would just take personal agency, listen to Rob. Black people just need to listen to Rob and Sarah and pull yourself up by your goddamn bootstraps. If you'd stop being so pathetic, and then there you go. All your problems would be solved. No racism to be seen here.
But Ryan, we've seen it. We've seen it happen.
Hang on.
We've seen black, white, Asian,
is it not possible?
All pull themselves up by their bootstraps of all sorts, of all kinds, in all sorts of different places. Right. So, like, why do we have to make everybody else like level down?
Wasn't there a black president?
Nobody's leveling anybody down. I don't know what you're talking about.
You're steering down the white people by stealing their opportunities that they rightfully
bullshit. That's not happening. It's not happening.
Ryan, wasn't there a black president of the United States of America, like the most powerful man in the world?
Last I checked, now we got an orange one.
8 years in a row.
Let me continue.
Wait, so you're saying Obama wasn't a president, or that he wasn't black?
Through some super chats.
I'm sorry.
There's been some waiting here for a while. Another new account says with the big 5, Ryan, your dumb argument stuttering was that those platforms weren't popular enough. Twitter has more users than Reddit. Why is Reddit more censored?
No, what I actually said is that those platforms, the reason that those platforms are not as popular as they could be is because they don't do the kind of curation that platforms like Reddit and like YouTube and these other ones do, and that Twitter used to do. And there's a reason that Twitter is now more unbearable, even to right-wingers. Like, there's a reason that most right-wingers don't even like Twitter as much as they used to, because it fucking sucks now.
This is a Section 230 argument. If you're a platform or an editorial-based type thing.
Calvin College with the Big 10 says, for Rinyald, I want to hear what he has to say about classified documents. Getting rid of digital emails versus paperwork is different. Both Pence and Biden allowed FBI to search home. Trump did not.
It's a lie. Trump did.
Allowed.
After
you let him
in, right? Not initially. He didn't initially.
I was muted. My bad. Well. Yeah, the thing that I was going to point out is just that it seems like there's more demonstrable intentionality behind Trump's than Hillary Clinton's. But I mean, it seems like this is probably the inappropriate time to get super into the details.
We can do it real quick. What is there any doubt of intentionality that Paul Gambetta, the person who deleted the subpoenaed emails, fully admits, I knew that it was a crime, I knew that they were subpoenaed, and I still deleted them?
So in regard to Hillary Clinton, I don't believe that ties back to any top-down directive. So I'd say it's pretty different to say that unless you're claiming that the FBI was sparing this particular person due to him being associated with Democrats, then maybe. And I've said this on other panels that we've been on. I think he probably should have been charged. But as it relates back to Hillary Clinton, I would say that probably not. And
it doesn't have to relate back to Hillary Clinton, right? The problem would be politically, it would have been a disaster for Hillary if he would have been charged. You would agree with that, correct?
I don't know.
Yeah, it would have. Secondly, it doesn't matter anyways, right? The point is that the FBI is engaged in a double standard with this, and what Hillary's team did was worse. But even more important than that, well, I guess not more important, but to answer your question, like, if you were involved, if your boss told you to commit a crime, right? And all of a sudden the police are knocking at your door and they're going to throw you in jail, right? And they say, listen, Rinyard, here's the deal. We'll give you complete and total immunity, right? But we want you to tell you who told us that. Don't you think you'd have an incentive, particularly if you had a powerful boss, to just say, yeah, it was all me, man? And they'd say, okay, good. The problem was we'll never know if there was a top-down order. What we do know is that Cheryl Mills met with Paul Combetta 2 days or a week or so before he did this deletion, and Paul Combetta claims, I have no idea what that meeting was about. I mean, the FBI said, good enough for us.
Is this, well, first of all, it doesn't strike me as super out of the ordinary for a tech guy to be meeting with a lawyer that works on behalf of Hillary Clinton. That doesn't strike me as super unusual. But on top of that, isn't that kind of an admission that we actually don't have any evidence of any top-down directive, and this doesn't tie back to Hillary
Certainly,
Clinton?
I've never claimed otherwise. I said that Hillary's team deleted subpoenaed evidence. And secondly, you want me to believe that Paul Combetta remembered a conversation he had with Cheryl Mills 7 months prior. He remembered that and had an oh shit, but he didn't remember the conversation he had a week prior. I don't know what that was about. He says.
I mean, it's possible. I don't know. Do we know how many correspondence that this person had with the lawyer? Anyway?
Well, no. The hoops that you all are willing to jump through.
Well, no, that's not a hoop. If I had 30
Rob, the stretch is real, right?
No, this isn't a stretch. If I had 30 meetings with this person, and you're asking me what I discussed on this particular meeting, I probably wouldn't know. I feel like that's a pretty.
But you would remember one you had 6.5 months previous.
I mean, if somebody told me to go home and delete a bunch of information and I didn't end up doing it and I remember it a couple months later, that also doesn't strike me as super unbelievable.
See, I know that I'm not saying you specifically, Rinyard. I like you, right? But I know Democrats are full of shit in general about this, and here's why. When they charge people like Nada, Trump's assistant, or when they charge someone like Michael Cohen, Democrats get real giddy. They're like, oh, he's going to flip. This guy's going to flip on Trump. This is good. And they're all excited. In every criminal investigation that I've ever paid attention to or heard, here's generally how things go. You want to get the mafia boss. So what you do is you find a low-level guy and you see him selling weed on the street. So you arrest him and then you turn the screws on and you say, listen here, Buster, you're going to jail for 5 years unless you flip on someone above you. And then what happens is there's a hope that they'll flip. That's generally how policing goes. And that's exactly how they did it against Trump. They went after low-level people. We're going to go after Carter Page. We're going to go after Papadopoulos. We're going to go after Roger Stone. And yet with Hillary's team, when they had this guy dead to rights, it was the exact opposite. They're like, we're going to give everyone immunity, and then we'll ask them, have anything to say about your boss? And they're all like, no, we don't have anything to say. And they're like, good enough. Why would the FBI adopt two completely different approaches? With Trump's team, it was aggressively go after everyone for any little crime in the hopes that they would flip on Trump. But for Hillary's team, it was, let's give everyone immunity and then see what they say.
I mean, I agree that there are definitely double standards in the way that Democrats typically cover these cases, but it also wouldn't shock me if they take a way more aggressive approach in regard to a case about potentially having classified. Please let me finish. Please let me finish. It would make more sense to me if they took a way more aggressive approach to a claim of having classified information on a private email server than a claim that the current president of the United States is coordinating with a foreign entity to rig the election. That feels like a way more important claim that you would probably police a little more aggressively.
Wait, Daniel, but it's not just that. They went aggressively after Trump and his assistant for having classified material, not working with Russia. This was after Russia collusion investigation was done, and it was proved to be bullshit. Still after that, the FBI was like, oh, boy, we're going to go after him aggressively for mishandling classified documents. We're going to charge the low-level guy because we think he was told to move boxes. But with Hillary's team, same sort of argument, mishandling classified documents. It was, well, we're not going to go that aggressive. In fact, we're going to do the opposite of aggressive. We're going to give them all immunity.
In that regard, I'd have to see the kind of way that the investigation unfolded. But I will say that I think it's important to say that in Trump's case, we had way more damning evidence, like him, telling people this is highly confidential. I should have declassified it, but I didn't. Whereas Hillary Clinton, we have this possibly conceived, a possible conception of maybe a top down.
But again, even the explanations. Wait.
That were smashed.
The what?
It's different. It's different. Like, I'll make his argument for him. Yes, the things that were smashed, it was considered like policy that the FBI would sometimes do this. And they made an agreement with these people like Cheryl Mills that said, look, we're worried that shit will get leaked. We'll only hand this shit over without a subpoena if you agree to destroy it. And that's what, now it's still shitty that they destroyed, but that's the argument that people will make. Now, though, Renyal, to your point, right? Like, the idea that it's like, well, it was damning that Trump said I should have declassified this. One, he was just waving a paper in the air and said, oh, I don't even know if I'm supposed to say this. I could have declassified it, right? But if that's a big deal, then why didn't they charge Joe Biden when he said to his ghostwriter, this is probably classified. Here, go ahead and read it on tape.
Did he say this is probably classified? Go ahead and read it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd have to hear the tape. I'll look into that. I'll write it down. It's my impression that I'm pretty sure the ghostwriter said that he didn't think that the thing was classified. But I mean, I can look into that claim. If that is true, then I think they probably should have charged Joe Biden. Although there is the old man thing, so I'd have to look into that specific investigation.
Yeah, I thought it was Trump who was caught on tape, basically telling someone to read classified material.
As a
But I
point
would-
of order, the
I would-
executive, the president can at will just make something class or unclass, like
Okay, that's.
just
I mean, like
by
after
thought process.
can
It
you,
doesn't
like,
have to be written down or anything.
Can you like he admitted that that it was classified and that he did not declassify it? Can you
Real
classify
quick,
it after you leave the presidency?
If you're the current president, if you're currently the
Well, what if
president,
you're
you can
not the
classify
current
class
president?
at will.
What if you're not?
He
the current
specifically
president?
said after. He specifically said
No,
after
you
that he
cannot.
could.
Okay, so
could
that's
have
not
done that, but he
related.
didn't.
According to a February 2024 special counsel report by Robert Hur, President Biden did tell his ghostwriter Zwanitzer that some of the material in his notebooks was probably classified, or the words to that effect.
Did he read any of the material in that notebook that he said was
Yes.
probably classified?
Yes, because it was for his memoirs. He was reading it all. Not only that, you're not going to believe this, but it is true. It's actually, there's weird law differences that reading classified documents is less harsh than showing classified. And he actually gave the ghostwriter the material.
Well, I'm pretty sure in Trump's case, he was also like showing the specific attack
He
plan for a certain
waved
country,
a paper
right?
around. We're not even sure that it was classified. He may have just been big man saying it. We do know that some of the documents that Joe Biden were showing were in fact classified.
I mean, hey, I'll look into it. But I mean, it does feel like, at least as it relates to Hillary Clinton's thing, this is a kind of case.
Is this classified?
Maybe we can talk about it the next time we're on a panel.
It's clear cut. Hillary's team did something that Trump's team didn't. They knew that there was subpoena, and they destroyed the evidence that they knew was subpoenaed.
Well, they also didn't the Trump campaign also know that people were coming for documents and then told the people to like move it and burn it?
Yep.
No, I don't think they said to burn it at all.
Not
Citation needed on that.
Their own lock on that room. And
Citation needed for that.
for
Ringo.
this.
Hell,
I might be wrong. I know for a fact they were telling them to move it. I heard reports
The
of
move
maybe
it
they
thing,
were
yeah,
wrong.
they had them move it before the investigators came and looked in Mar-a-Lago. Yeah.
Whatever happened with the
that would be
classified documents that Biden had?
What was all the pictures of documents on the floor? It was folders.
Like you get the difference in magnitude, Trippy, between like one folder of something and boxes upon boxes of them, right?
Yeah,
stored all
boxes
around
upon
Mar-a-Lago.
boxes in Joe Biden's garage.
They
and
were
over
sitting
near
on the
car and in
in the
his
passenger seat of the
buildings,
Corvette, right?
unlocked buildings, right? Yes, next to the Corvette. All of that.
Maybe
I
this
thought
is
someone
just
were in
a-
the Corvette.
Maybe this is just an
Right.
incorrect talking point. Like whenever there was request to give the documents back, Joe Biden did end up complying with the investigators.
So did
right?
Trump. Also, Trump declassified. a
No,
bunch
no,
of
no, no, no,
documents.
no.
It wasn't
Stop.
moving around the
Stop.
boxes.
No.
Does
How
not
can you
cooperate.
do
It's
that?
a lie.
He did not
Not
cooperate
cooperate.
over a year with the
Allowed
National
FBI
Archives.
to put a
Y'all
lock
are silly.
on the
Come on.
door,
How
and,
can
and then they came and they used a bolt cutter to
Trump negotiated.
their own lock off.
I don't understand what's the relevance of that?
But again, it's not that Biden.
Bad, right? Sounds scary.
Documents.
Biden
Because
didn't
Trump wasn't
cooperate
hiding
either.
anything. He
Here's
like
what happened.
the Secret
Biden did-
Service had told him, "Hey, how do you make the place where you're storing these documents into basically a skiff? Not exactly a
So
skiff.
how do we
but
square the idea?
How do you
that-
do this?"
How do we square the idea?
And then
that
they
he was
raided him.
How do we square the idea that he was complying with investigators, but also telling people to hide the documents when
Oh, that's
investigators were
simple.
coming?
The FBI
I want a
literally
citation on
put
that.
their own lock on the door.
They
Again,
put their own
like-
lock on the door. What does that have to do with anything?
And again, like the
Hey,
point is, like,
The FBI locked the room so nobody could go in.
I have never heard that Trump told anybody to hide anything before. This is the first
There
time
are
I'm hearing.
claims-
Well, you
there are
should
claims-
read
just
the
to be
court
clear,
case.
the
'cause
indictment
I mean,
says-
I'm not
what the
saying that-
allegations are.
The indictment said that there were 64 boxes that were being moved by NADA. 30 of those were returned before the FBI got there. NADA allegedly told people that he was instructed to move those boxes. Now, if they would have offered NADA immunity, he may have said, hey, you know what? No one told me to do it, right? You know, like they did. But he didn't get the same sweetheart deal that Hillary's team did. But I just want to push back on the point that Biden allegedly cooperated. No, he didn't. What Biden did was had his team go after Trump for the very crime that he himself was committing. If Biden was really cooperating, then when he's reading to his ghostwriter in circa 2018, 2019, and he says, oh shit, this is probably classified.
Do you have any evidence that Biden
And way more
directed the
egregiously,
Trump?
by the way.
Finish. I appreciate the interruption. You could ask the question afterwards. I'll finish my point. Right. If he was really interested in cooperating, as soon as he said to that ghostwriter, this is probably classified, he would have returned it. But he didn't. Instead, he kept it. Why?
I don't know. I'd have to look into the claim. But I mean, when we say cooperate, I feel like it's pretty clear what we mean is that like whenever the FBI asked for the documents back, they were given back. Did he?
But
Give
they
the documents
didn't
back when
ask
they
for.
were asked?
But what happened was Biden realized how bad it was going to look, that he was going after Trump for a crime that Democrats commit all the time, and Republicans, the mishandling of classified documents, and so it'd look real fucking bad that he committed the exact same crime that he was going after Trump. So then he decided to preemptively cooperate.
Biden may be the worst one in history about how many egregious violations have been. He stole stuff out of skiffs as a senator.
I have a question for Rob. Were the documents that Biden had in his possession while he was president or a senator?
No. So, well, senator and vice president.
Right. He did not have presidential power to have those documents.
Presidential
Senate-
power.
Oh, yeah, no, all-
classify the documents would be what it was. He didn't have the ability. To
Most all of
classify
it
them.
was 100% illegal that he even had them.
He didn't have them as president. He had them as vice president.
Yeah, but
and
that's not
as a
nobody,
senator.
And
nobody's
senator.
alleging that he. That has nothing to do with the.
Just because you're president doesn't mean you can take a shitload of classified documents when you stop being president.
Right. Let me make.
Commander-in-Chief.
Well,
Wait.
yeah, that you kind of can.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, you kind of can't.
Let me make.
If,
the
no,
last
you
point.
100%. If you declassify
Not
them,
when you're leaving
it's-
office.
no, Ryan, it's no.
Alright,
If you're still the
let
president,
me-
you can at will.
No.
Or sorry,
Okay, well, Trump didn't
Classify,
do that,
yes.
and he bragged about how he could have done that
no,
before.
you can 100%. The president
this.
just at will makes things class or
I
unclass.
understand that, and Trump
All
did not do
right. Evan sent in the big five.
If it was moved before he stopped being president,
A group that has the most power while being a minuscule minority is not targeted by CRT. Is it because they wrote it?
Who are
Okay,
you
so he's
talking
doing
about?
he's doing an anti-Semitic. He's doing an anti-Semitic trope here. But to be
It's not
clear,
a
Jew,
trope,
like
it's reality.
so
Who
to be
writes-
clear, to be clear, critical race theory does talk about the racialization of Jewish people, and it's an important part of understanding what happened and like the history of why and how Jewish people have been oppressed. It's super valuable to understanding that. So CRT does actually address Jewish people.
But what
Okay,
about them going in?
he didn't say Jewish people.
But what
I
about
know what he.
like,
We all know what he meant. We
like,
can
Robert
depend on.
Lee- a
Real
lot of the
Robert
banks and stuff like that.
Flowers
You don't know what he meant.
says
I knew what he
with
meant.
the Big Ten.
Evan knew what I meant because Evan knew what he meant because he
sound
engaged.
of Ryan's piss hitting the urinal. It sounds.
I thought he meant
feminine.
Asians.
Take those cameras out of my bathroom.
Flowers out. Another
Ryan,
new
I thought he meant
account
Asians.
says, I love how Ryan gives up and doesn't want to engage Rob's hypotheticals, but when Rob and Effigy are talking, Ryan finds the nerve to interrupt.
Yeah, but I've been sitting here being quiet for so long, and Rob, don't look. I interrupt Rob sometimes, but Rob interrupts me as well. I'm whatever.
I think I could.
That wasn't the
time
point of
them.
the comment. That wasn't the point at all.
Yeah, but-
You just completely dodged that.
Any town says with the big
Any
five,
town.
the Labor Board and HUD were agencies created by civil rights that advocate for blacks, creating an incentive to not hire blacks, then fight government agencies.
Ooh.
Sarah, would you like me to read your things? Would you like that?
No,
He does that sometimes. He's like the announcer guy.
no.
epic voice guy.
Anonymous says, I want to give a shout out to
Semi-professional.
Rinyald. He destroyed Manor and made Manor Reports rage quit. It was hilarious. Win, Rinyald. Well, congratulations to you, Rinyald. I hate Manure Reports. He gets on my fucking nerves. Another new account says, that's what That's not what you said, Ryan, but it was an hour ago, so it's okay if you forgot. Regardless, left-wing platforms are censored more. Saying otherwise is cope.
They have more curated content that gets rid of like explicit racism and stuff. Yeah, I agree.
No, it's literally
And more
anything
than
and
that.
all things that they consider racist.
And
We
Kissy
can
Cat
disagree about what's
saying,
Factually.
Kissy Cat saying what everybody should be saying is, "We're so sorry, Sarah."
We're
All
so
right.
sorry,
But Ryan, you
Uncle
completely
Albert.
What I'll
dodged
say is
my
you're welcome,
question,
Sarah.
though. You completely dodged my question. You go over all the time saying that whites are represented in positions of power when they are the majority of the country, but for a minority population where they have almost nothing, like in terms of like population, but they are in so many positions of power. I thought the whole point of CRT is to go in, like, level everything out and make it so that everyone has an equal opportunity.
It's not that.
of outcome.
It's a framework for understanding why things are the way they are. And if you look at the history of Jewish people, then you can see why they're in certain positions. Yeah.
Why? Can you explain
Can
that?
you explain that, please? Yeah, I was about to say the same thing, Rob. Me and you were right there.
Why are Jewish people overrepresented in certain positions of power? Because of the unique history that Jewish people have. Jewish families have gone to certain areas and become more what's the word?
Couldn't you say the same thing about men, Ryan?
I mean, like, what else do you think it is? Like,
well,
do you think they're just made that they're just special?
Allow me to make the argument,
Rob,
right? Wasn't the Holocaust like this terrible thing that happened to Jewish people? It almost wiped them out, correct?
It was pretty bad, yeah.
And haven't they faced racism in countries they've gone to all over the world, including the United States?
Yeah, no
and
doubt.
Yet somehow they're achieving immensely despite all of those setbacks in just the past 50, 60 years. They're now probably the most powerful group in the United States when it comes to sort of the metrics that we use, when it comes to wealth on average, when it comes to low levels of incarceration rates, all of the things that we say qualify successful. If they went through all of this abuse, even more recently than blacks, including the Holocaust, including racism, why are they doing so well?
I mean, again, there's a lot of reasons for it, but
give me one.
I mean, like, what do you think it is? What's your explanation?
Themselves up by their bootstraps.
I think that
they just got their shit together, but black people just won't do that. Is what you're saying, right?
I think that a lot of it has to do with culturally. I think that
I don't agree that black people are just like failing to pull themselves up or whatever, and Jewish people only did it.
I'll even get
if that's your narrative, that's fine. If that's your narrative, you live with that. That's
you're interrupting when I'm trying to give you something to actually bitch about. Ready? I think a lot of it has to do with culture.
Where does that culture come from?
People could hear me. And I think it also has to do with biology.
What do you mean by biology?
I think that it turns out that Ashkenazi Jewish people have really high IQs.
Because of their biology?
Yes.
They're like biologically more intelligent is what you're saying? Like Jews,
yes.
So would you say that black people are biologically less intelligent?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's your evidence for that?
Jews, it seems to be evident.
Is that because they're the chosen people, Rob?
I think that there is. I don't know if people can hear me because I can't see myself.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
we can hear you describing how black people are biologically lower IQ. We can hear you say that.
Yes, I think that it is both societal and biological factors that factor into IQ. Yes.
Yeah. So we all heard Rob. We all heard Rob just now say that black people are biologically dumber than white people.
Are you saying that genetics don't play into IQ, Ryan?
Guys, this is unfair. I don't think Brian's black at all.
I don't think that black people.
I don't even think he's ever met a black person, to be honest with you.
Well, let me ask you, Ryan. Why are you so certain that genetics don't play a part?
Or that IQ matters so much? Why? That's the opposite take.
Rob was the one brought up the IQ argument.
Okay, but you seem to reject it outright and say.
So you're agreeing with IQ? Okay.
Right, you reject it outright and say it's racism to even suggest it.
My understanding is that more recent evidence regarding IQ claims is that there's a information gap that has been closed over the past few decades, especially, and that black people on average, if you actually as you control for that information gap, that black people actually tend to do just as well. And
that may be true. What I'm saying is that there are IQ differences between you can't even accuse me of being white supremacist. Whites fall somewhere in the middle, right?
This is a common white supremacist talking point, by the way, is that Jewish people are just higher IQ. I mean, you might not.
No, Ryan, it's Asians. I mentioned this earlier. It's Asians that I thought that comment was talking about Asians too, not
this is
Jews.
like a race
Premises
realism
don't
thing. You
get a
guys are
chance.
getting
Go
into.
ahead, Rob.
Get accused
Go
of being
ahead, Rob.
racist, don't get a
real.
chance to defend myself. So, anyways, I'll make the point, right? Like, I don't know. I think my guess would be that genetics and like upbringing have to do with how you get IQ. I would think that. But if we look at the upbringing of Jewish people, they suffered more recently far greater than black people, and yet they seem to be thriving. You can't give any explanation, but then if I mention that genetics may have part of it, or even culture, you're just like, you imply it's racist to even suggest it. So give me your answer. Why do you think that Jewish people have done so spectacularly despite the brutal racism and Holocaust?
I don't know. I can't explain. It must be genetics, right?
No, that I'm asking the opposite.
That was your explanation. I'm gonna let you have your explanation. I'll leave it to it, Rob.
I'm giving possible hypotheticals, right? And you're just like, nope, all of that's racism. Genetics. All of that's racism. Then give a different answer. Then what's your answer?
No, I'm okay. I'm fine with your answer. You can have that answer. I don't want to engage with that. I'm good.
You're acting incredulous because this is the last bastion of a lefty that you just scream racism and you're unwilling to have a conversation. And this is why people like you.
I'm letting you say your piece. I'm not fighting you on it.
The one truthful thing you did say today was that your anti-racism stance is for your own benefit. That's what it is. You actually don't give a shit about making outcomes better for black people. If you did, you would look at the possible reasons that. And
I would tell them like you. I would say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, black people like Robbins, right?
I didn't say it once, right? Again, you're just acting incredulous because you want to ignore possible reasons for this. Give me one reason why you think Jewish people are doing so well. Give me one.
That's how we straw man, Ryan. That's a good straw man.
You can't give one. You can't
answer his question
because it disproves your
maybe I
entire
could.
thesis.
I'm not engaging with you because I think this is a disgusting conversation.
Now, and last thing I'll say, and then I promise I'll give the other.
No, it is disgusting because of your straw mans.
When that super chatter put in and said, how come Ryan refused to deal with Rob's hypothetical, but then once Rob offered it to Effigy, Ryan jumped in like a tough guy. Same thing here. When Ryan knows that his worldview is collapsing, he just acts incredulous and says, I refuse to deal with it. I refuse to deal with it.
I don't feel like anything's collapsing at all.
If it's true that discrimination and horrible historical offense are why black people are where they're at, then why wouldn't the same be for the Jewish people? And
do you think Jewish people have the same? Okay, do you think Jewish people have the same racist policies affecting them in the United States over the past 60 years?
I think that they suffered even greater through the Holocaust, and there were many racist policies that also affected them. Yes,
laws against
except in the United States.
Yes,
ancient Egypt as well.
Like across the world,
they are
worldwide.
The Civil Rights Act specifically, you think that got Jews into like schools and stuff?
They're probably the most oppressed people in the entire world, like throughout history.
I brought up something that I think, okay, hey Ryan, were the people that built Egypt black?
Oh wait, hang on. Just in the 2020.
Hey, hang on, man.
I'm remembering you said 2018 through 2022. Jews were the biggest victim of violence from melanated individuals in New York.
And good thing we're not just talking about victims of violence. We're talking about literal legal
violent.
Isn't that what you said racism was earlier, though?
No, I never said that.
Like if I thought we made that definition earlier about if
I never said anything about violence.
I mean, it just seems evident to me that this gives, and these sort of talking points, like imagine this worldview that Ryan has. White people are like created this system to benefit themselves and oppress other groups. And yet they're like in the middle of the pack. Somehow all these other groups, Asians, Jewish people, people that come from India, etc., they're all doing better than white people by most. So
white people didn't create a perfect system to be the best in all cases, so therefore white supremacy doesn't exist.
But wait. But they created a system that gives them some sort of leg up, right?
I mean, yeah, obviously.
Okay, then why aren't they at the top? What's the explanation for why they're not?
What's your metric for doing better, though?
Please, let's leave Ryan answer. Let's leave Ryan answer, and then I'll answer you.
No,
why aren't white people at the top then? Are they inferior in some way?
I mean,
if all the rules were set up
since you think this like racial divide is a real thing, I don't. But like, if you think it is, then maybe that's your explanation.
Explain it. See, again, you're getting incredulous. If you're saying that this system was created to benefit white people and it's not perfect, but it gives them a leg up, why aren't they at the top of the system?
I guess they didn't do a good enough job.
Ryan thinks he's inferior.
Is it biological? Is it
what do you mean they're inferior? Why would that make them inferior just because they couldn't create a perfect system where they're on top?
No, it's inferior because there are races that are outperforming them on the metrics that we consider for successful. And yet, if seeing as how they've created the system to benefit themselves, and to at least some degree it's done that, then why are they falling behind?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they didn't do a good enough job trying to make themselves the best, right?
So, but what is it about white people, for example, what is it about white people specifically that even when they have all the advantages, they can't do best? What is it about them? Why?
Where's this claim coming from? I'm very curious.
I'd like for Ryan to engage.
That we're not doing the best. White people are 65% of the country, but we have over 80% of the wealth.
No, that's not. When you look at average wealth, when you're looking at per capita, whites, and when it comes to wealth accumulation, when it comes to incarceration rates, when it comes to almost every factor that we look at and say black people are doing worse than white people by almost every one of those metrics, Asian people are outperforming whites, Jewish people are outperforming whites, and
both
many other
extreme
groups.
minorities, right?
What's that?
America.
Both extreme minorities, right?
No. Excuse me. Asians are like a quarter of the population of the entire world. That's not
in the
minority.
You guys keep blowing this up. We keep talking about U.S.
Both China and India each have both China and India each have roughly a quarter of the population of the world in them. So it's roughly half of the world population is Asian.
He's saying that has nothing to do with the United States. That's why they're minorities in the United States.
You know,
but
the richest guy in the world is African American.
Why does the smallness of the minority change things? In fact, you would think that would be even worse for them then.
Especially if they're
because the majority is going to have the extremes, right? Because we're 65% of the population will have most of the wealth and more of the poor people.
I noticed that's a deflection from the question I asked. I said, if there are groups that are even smaller minorities, you would expect the discrimination that's going against them because there's a society created to benefit white people to be even more exaggerated. And yet somehow they're outperforming whites.
Wouldn't it depend on the mechanism of the oppression? Like if they're oppressed based on like a glance and like trying to decide what group they fall into based on how they look at a glance, and you can't always identify whether or not a person is Jewish or white, then
can you explain what that means? Can you explain what that means?
Evan just said
Ryan, can you explain what at a glance means?
Okay.
Or phenotypical features, what I mean.
What about Asians?
You can just look at them. Look at that Jew, right?
People of Vietnamese descent,
black people
of Asian descent, you can see
obviously that's the point, Evan.
Do you guys not agree that one group is distinct from the other as far as its unique experience in America? Like one of them is like a complete immigrant group, and the other like former slaves that were redlined in certain areas and.
Yes, you could say, but now you start to see the problem, right? You could say, well, no two groups are ever equal. So we could pick and choose and say, well, the reason that these groups are doing poor is because they've created a white supremacist system to keep whites on top. But then when you're like, but whites aren't on top, there are other groups, and you're like, yeah, but they face different oppression. My question is, if all things are equal, if we can't talk about culture, if we can't talk about genetics, right?
Most of that, I think a lot of liberals admit most has been.
Yeah, Rob, I think I've talked all this whole time.
Yes, and I already said at the very beginning, Rob and Ryan both have the priority of the panel. The rest of there are 7 of you attacking both of them in different corners. All right, so they will have the priority. Rob, please continue.
So the argument is that whites have created this system to benefit themselves. And Ryan admits that it's at least been partially successful. So if it's not cultural and it's not genetics, why aren't whites at the top?
I do think it's culture. I think culture is part of it.
Okay, so then do you think culture is part of the reason that blacks aren't doing so well?
To some degree, yeah.
Okay, what parts of their culture do you think?
I think that there's specific cultures that have emerged from the black community that are more likely to emerge there because of like a history of racism. Yeah.
Okay, and then real quick, last question. What part of the cultures of white people lead to them underperforming where they should be because they have all this institutional bias?
When you say under where they should be, what do you mean by that?
I mean, if everything's equal and whites have a system specifically geared to,
but they're overrepresented in like every single area. So
that's not true. And almost every metric when it comes to per capita or average, Asians outperform whites, Jews outperform whites. Why?
Okay, but outperforming doesn't like white people are still overwhelmingly the majority in every single.
But do you not understand per capita? Do you not understand this?
White men specifically are overrepresented.
That's not true. Jewish men and Asian men.
It's like 65 to 70% of CEOs.
Again, Jewish men.
Jewish people are kind of white. Like look, I'm gonna say it. Jewish people are kind of white. All right, let's be real here. Jewish people are kind of white.
Only when it's convenient, though. Like
I'll say it.
There are statistics in there.
Everyone looks so incredulous because they have no idea what racism is.
But now I actually
think about it.
It's not anti-Semitic.
Ryan's the expert on racism, y'all. You gotta defer to Ryan. He's the expert on racism.
You were actually racist.
All I had to do to have you was sign up for tier 2. 'Cause you're my Patreon girl and depends on how much money that I pledge to you monthly.
Diabetes.
Gentlemen, you
Someone had to
all
say it.
know how I feel about you all talking. So now I'm going to let the chat talk because they sent some super chats, and then we'll get back to this conversation. We'll probably go for another 15 more minutes because I'm starting to weary off. Of course, we did get our Umbreon solo layout. Thank you, Umbreon, for making your appearance, your debut. We love Umbreon. Yes, we do. Puppy treats. If you want to donate puppy treats, go over to Ryan's channel and send money and buy Umbreon some puppy treats. Another new account says with the big five, say curated all you want. Left-wing censorship is why everyone has to avoid TOS that you're mad about. Your earlier BS claim is void. Your creation.
I think that markets actually incentivize this. Like, people don't want to go onto a platform where there's a shit ton of racism.
Yeah, the markets dictate
so,
because of left wing.
It's about advertising.
So thank you, left wing people, for making it, for deciding that
Terrible
racism
for
is not
everybody,
profitable.
so that everybody has to watch their mouth.
Ryan, Sarah was going through super chats.
What?
Sarah was going through super chats right now.
Yeah, and I was responding to the.
Yeah, he's responding.
Thank you.
Oh.
No, Brian, let Sarah.
The incredible Hawk. It's hilarious listening to these libs cry gish gallop while claiming Rob's point lacks nuance, despite not being able to cite anything that addressed his points. It's all non sequiturs all the way down.
I think that's a very, very bad characterization of at least the first half of our conversation. I think I was engaging very directly, and I was addressing the nuance that I felt was lacking explicitly over and over. And then we moved on to things I knew less about. But
I will say that is kind of like a good characterization. Like at like the beginning, like I may criticize them in the beginning, but looking at this now, I'm sorry for even like criticizing it for you, Rob, or for you, Radical Coder. Like that was like really thought-provoking stuff compared to some of the dumpster fire we're at now.
No, I would agree. The first half was really good.
So actually, Ryan and Rob, before we even started the debate, I already made note that they both tend to talk for long periods of time, and we all agreed, with all three of us agreed backstage, we're going to work through this as long as we're not interruptive, so on and so forth. I will allow them to talk at lengths because I know that they're very explanatory. It's not a bad thing. It's very. I wouldn't consider the Gish Gallop to be part of their points most often. Cody White with the Big Ten. Liberals struggle with second order thinking. What is the end goal of CRT? True racial equity is unobtainable. Too many variables.
So CRT doesn't have a quote unquote end goal. I mean, there might be some ideas like a more equitable world that people in CRT would aspire towards. But like true racial equality, equity or whatever, like, I mean, if you could say it's unobtainable, but it's something to strive towards, right? So I don't think it's a bad thing.
I'll agree with Ryan on this one
because I don't like racial equity, but some of us do. So,
well, I mean,
I believe
Ryan,
Al Sharpton.
If you and I are playing poker and I get dealt a fairly reasonably good hand, and you get dealt a very shitty hand, does that mean that you should have the ability to go and draw 3 more cards to pick through those to try to make your hand better?
Well, if you imagine that the dealer intentionally gave you a better hand, then maybe so.
Can you prove that it was intentionally dealt?
Thank you.
Are you asking me to prove that racism?
Yes, I'm asking you to prove your hypothetical the same way that everyone's been asking you to prove the reverse.
If you understand anything about it,
wait, no, be sweaker. Okay. Obama said everybody's racist, so we.
Yeah, I forgot.
Everybody's racist now.
You're right.
Ryan, if everybody had the ability to choose their parents, the house, the income, and everything that they were going to be born into, do you think we would all choose a very specific way?
Probably one that's more financially well off, sure.
Probably with every opportunity granted to us, the biggest house possible, all the vehicles and all of the needs, the wants, the extras, the everything, and so on and so forth. We would all.
We're not talking about extras. We're talking about like black people being specifically barred from even having the beard like necessities.
Are
right?
they being
They weren't allowed
barred
to even
from
go
it,
to real
or is
schools.
that up to their parents to provide that?
America,
Well, I mean,
millionaires.
Okay, if you have segregated schools where like black people have objectively worse schools,
We are no
that has nothing to
longer-
do with their parents making
They
good
have more
choices or
money.
not, right?
We're not segregated.
You mean
And
like historically
I mean,
black
to be
universities?
fair, the U.S. is still segregated in a lot of ways, but
Let
If-
Sarah get her point out, please.
if a school is a shitty school, it is up to the government to fix that. That is not everybody else's problem. Like we're not picking for that to be that way. Like I know Baltimore at one point they paid, it was like $175,000 to bus a bunch of kids down from the inner city schools down to DC to go do a protest. This was a big deal. And those same very schools that they bus those kids from didn't even have working air conditioners. So it's priorities, right? Like all of these opportunities we talk about, like we choose other priorities for some weird ass reason, and we're watching it in full vision in front of us. But naturally, we would all pick. Naturally,
who's
we
cutting
would
the funding for the school.
The black mayor.
Again, this
the black mayor is reducing funding across the country for public
She
schools?
was the one who chose to send the kids on these bus trips down to a protest that didn't need to happen. That wasn't even a priority.
You say it doesn't need to happen, like, and that's
seriously, like, does it like? Let's think about it. The kids can't even sit in school and learn the actual shit they need to learn because it's too fucking hot.
So this field trip, it could have funded all the air conditioners.
But
yeah,
again,
$175,000. Yeah, I think so.
And like you can
for
see
one school, right?
You can see right what's going on here. Like it's always going to be like racism, right? What do they use? Something of the gaps, right? It's always going to be that. So for example, it's like, well, Republicans are underfunding. We could look at that. Inner city schools get far more government money than rural schools. Like they still, as they get more and more money overall, the results go lower and lower. These inner city schools are in cities predominantly that are controlled by Democrats in all forms of government and have been controlled by Democrats for decades, and yet less and less people, despite the fact we're spending more and more money, are proficient with reading, proficient for math. And so then what's the explanation for that? And Ryan's going to be like, more racism. That's what it is. It's racism still. Send more money.
More complex things than just racism, but that's a big component, yeah.
If we send more money,
you think it's just schools and cities dragging us down?
If we send more money, if we double the money and the results go down, then the answer will be, well, send more money. It's still racism. And then if we double it again and the results go down again, they'll say, well, then send more money. It must be racism.
Or change how we're using the money. I agree. You change how we use the money.
Well, the problem is, right, that the idea that it's
better than sending less money.
It must just be racism. That must be the reason. Yes, that is what you're saying.
On some of these places and just put that money into things that actually work.
I'm going to say I agree with Ryan from a little bit ago, because Al Sharpton, when asked, "Hey, what is the success criteria of affirmative action?" and he said, "It can't ever end."
That's
essentially. That's a direct quote from Al Sharpton.
If you gave, like, if we could sit down and say, okay, let's come up with a financial number for reparations, a financial number that we would say this is it. It might be $20 million to each Black American, 20 million, right? And we could be like, that's it. This will end it, right? I will guarantee you, within 1
just print
year,
money.
any problems that occurred with like specific groups in the Black community, they'd say it wasn't enough. That wasn't enough for the historical inequities. It wasn't enough.
Interesting hypothetical. Let's try. Let's find out. Let's do reparations and find out if it works. Good idea. Good idea. Let's try reparations.
Billions of dollars of welfare has been given.
Black people get more welfare, like this. They get like better. Yep. Do they get? Better
Ryan, you want to print even more money?
I didn't say that.
Or do you think you're smarter? Ryan, do you think you're smarter than
Rob proposed the hypothetical where we gave people reparations, and
do you think you're smarter than Al Sharpton?
And I said, maybe, and I said that. Let's try it. Let's try some reparations. Let's try some basic reparations.
You think you're smarter than the black guy?
See what happens? Why not?
I don't think he's smarter than the black guy.
We have reparations. The reparations are that Black people disproportionately get welfare money
because they're more likely to be poor, which makes welfare accessible because of class.
So if
Is
we
that
give
privilege?
them a bunch of, so wait, if we give them a bunch of reparations in the form that you want, and then they still end up within a generation being poor, what would the excuse
Isn't
be?
that
then?
just another talking point that just more likely per capita, white people still get way more actual money from welfare?
Not per capita.
That's what
the fuck does per capita mean when this pile of money is way bigger than this pile of money?
Holy shit, you have per capita opposite. Per capita means like per a number of people.
No,
like per
I know what per
100,000
capita means.
people.
I'm just saying.
Right. So then do white people get more welfare per capita than blacks?
Not per capita.
Right, okay.
But the amount of money spent on white people on welfare is far larger than the amount of money spent on black people on
but if
welfare.
per capita blacks are getting more, why wouldn't that be considered a form of reparations?
What about illegals?
As Coder just said, it's obvious they're going to get more because they're targeted because they have a higher poverty rate. So of course per capita they would have more.
Okay, then if that's not considered reparations, can you tell me
Why
what
would that be
reparations
considered
are?
Don't you think you're making a mountain out of a molehill in that case?
Then fine. You tell me what reparations are.
Oh, I'm not for reparations.
No, but tell me what they are.
What
If
it
you're
is.
saying that
Ask me what they are.
blacks
No, but
getting
you
more welfare
are.
money per capita isn't reparations, then what is reparations?
I mean, I would say when reparations come to my mind is what we gave to people of Japanese descent who were interned during World War II.
So
there was a slight done to you, we cost you money, and we repay the money.
So
And
the
that
argument
is
would be
extended
that
for
they-
black people, sure.
They would get money.
That was
because
to
of
the people
historical-
who were damaged.
Right.
That had standing.
That's why I agree with it for Japanese internment.
I'm sorry,
But
Rob.
you would say then that
people had
reparations would be
standing,
money that goes to black people because they've been historically disenfranchised. So they're more likely to be poor.
Sure, I think there are definitely arguments to say that welfare programs can be considered, and a lot of people have considered them reparations. Sure, I think there's
Thanks,
a valid
that's what I was
argument to be made there.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, there's a valid argument to be made there for sure.
Devin says with the Big Ten, how is it that the lefties cannot see that they have the most racist perspective toward minority communities? It sounds like a savior complex. Minorities are incapable without our compassionate advocacy. That's another good point, actually.
It's not really that good of a point. I mean, it's a common talking point that people use to kind of deflect against their own like racist beliefs about those communities. I don't feel like I have a savior complex. I don't feel like I need to save black people. When we talk about reparations and stuff, what I'm encouraging
Do you not?
black people to be in charge of their own money and stuff, right? So
No,
they would have their own economic agency, not me. I wouldn't want to decide what black people do with their money. Rob thinks he knows what black people would do with their money. That's why he says reparations is a bad idea, because they would just spend it all on whatever. Well, I don't care what they spend it on. I think if they're entitled to that money because of historical racism, then maybe they should get that money regardless of what you think they're going to spend it on.
Ryan, that sounds like the opposite of what you've been saying the entire time.
You need to
Again,
stop
I'm
building
accused of
straw men.
racism. I'd like a chance to defend myself. Where did I ever say anything? You just spurg out. You're like getting your like.
You explicitly said a hypothetical where
shit.
black people got $20 million in reparations. You explicitly gave that hypothetical, right?
Yes.
And you said that wouldn't solve anything, right?
I said that if we saw that there were portions of black people that were doing poorly, the argument would be it wasn't enough. That doesn't mean that every black person would do poor, like you're saying. I
didn't say every black person. I didn't say you said that, Rob.
Okay, what did you say? I said the black people don't know how to spend their money, right? That's what you said. Did I say that?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, Ryan. If I was to give every white person in the state of Texas $10 million, do you think it would be reasonable to say that some of those people may spend frivolously?
No.
Would that include Hispanics? Just curiosity.
Wait, forget about that. Right. So,
Do I get it?
To ask the question again, because I'm not understanding your answer there. So I'll ask it one time. You think if I said some people will spend frivolously, do you think that would be true?
Yes.
Okay. Would it be racist to say it? Would you say, oh, you're saying white people don't know how to spend their money?
Maybe.
So you're racist because you just said that white people don't know how to spend their money.
No. So what I was saying is that you were trying to argue against reparations, right? And I was saying reparations might work because if we give people reparations, they would have more economic agency, right? They can make decisions they want. I don't feel like I have the know-all of what people should spend their money on. If black people are owed reparations because of systemic racism, which is an argument we can have, we can argue whether or not they deserve it, right? But if they are owed that money, then that would be the right thing to do, regardless of what they would spend it on. That was my point. And I didn't actually call you racist. I never actually called you a racist. I've never called you a racist this entire conversation, even though you've made several very racist comments, like when Joe was on and you were like, shit, and all that shit. Yeah, that was actually pretty fucking racist.
That's not racism.
I will say I am
racist just now,
owed
for the first time in this whole
reparations
conversation.
for this fucking panel. Pay up, chat. Anyways, but you, Rob, you were responding.
Yeah, I'll just say real quick. What you were saying is irrelevant. What I said was I was making a criticism of your position, which the criticism of your position is that it'll always be racism, always, and it's always that more is owed. It's always racism. Any failure, it's always going to be racism. And I said, so if we sat down as a country and said, what would be the amount, the dollar figure to make the racism whole, so that black people would no longer be disenfranchised, right? And we said it was $20 million. Black people that ended up within a generation or so being financially distraught, we would again say it was because of racism. That's what would happen.
You just buy out
systemic
racism?
We just agreed this is what made you whole. And people would say, no, because we underestimated how systemic the racism was. We underestimated the historical trauma. It's still racism. It's always going to be racism. It's the God of the gaps argument.
I don't think like handing people $20 million is going to like solve racism. Yeah, that's true. But I don't
so each person gets $20 million.
Wait,
each person gets $20 million.
It's not just going to solve racism. No, I'm sorry. Like racism is more complex than that. I don't know what to tell you. My bad.
No one said that. Would it solve
you
the
are the
economic
racist one, so it
disparity
makes
that
sense
racism
why we
caused?
say that.
Please, everyone.
Can everyone talk all at once?
Would it solve the economic disparity that racism caused?
It would certainly help.
Would it solve it?
I don't know. Probably not.
So $20 million to each black individual still wouldn't be enough.
I mean, I just don't think it would be that simple.
What do you mean? We're talking about economic disparity. We're saying black people are more likely to be poor because of racism.
Socioeconomic disparity.
We've just made them incredibly rich. Every single black person, far richer than any of us here will ever be. We just did that to every single black person, and you're like, still wouldn't be enough to solve the economic disparity.
I'm not saying I'm not saying it wouldn't solve economic disparity. It would address that like pretty much immediately. Yeah.
So then it would solve economic disparity.
Yes, but that doesn't mean it's going to solve all the other problems, right?
Well, you could understand why I thought you saying no was a fucking ridiculous argument.
Okay, I might have misspoke. If I said no, it wouldn't solve economic disparity specifically. Yes.
If just because somebody has money doesn't mean they're, number one, going to know what to do with it, but number two, it's not going to like increase their opportunities for anything either. Right? It's not going to change.
It would immediately.
I mean, like. Certainly you could buy anything you want, but it doesn't change whether you can get a job or not necessarily.
Which you wouldn't need to.
Well, you might need to if you spend it all in one day.
20 million.
Well, there's cultural problems.
There's no way
there's
you can spend 20 million.
Right.
There's certainly cultural problems. That's absolutely true. But if the argument is that racism has caused economic disparity and we come up with a figure that's absurd, like 20 million per person, say of course, racism will still exist. In fact, there'll probably be more racism because a bunch of people that aren't black are going to be infuriated that the value of their money just precipitously declined. And every black person's been made obscenely rich, which will negatively affect every other race. Racism may increase, but nonetheless, the economic disparity argument would be gone. If they choose to spend frivolously, which would happen with a certain amount of people, what would happen would be people would say that's because of racism once more, and it would just be a self-referential thing. And it's obvious because we can see it even in communities where we continue to spend more and more in schools that are ran by Democrats that are disproportionately ran by black people. We're still said the reason these schools are underperforming is racism. I didn't say that.
That's what I'm asking. I didn't say you said it. I'm asking, do you think we should give those schools less money?
I think those schools, we should probably offer school choice instead. We should allow those parents to receive a check from the government and they can choose where to send their school. And capitalism and competition will ensure that the schools do better then. When they're government funded and there's no accountability, it doesn't matter how much money you send, that it's not increasing the value of the education. It goes down even as we send more money.
So when people are doing school choice and they start going to other schools, what happens to the school that less people are going to?
They're going to have to do better. They're going to have to do better.
Or they're going to have to shut down, right?
That's not what he's talking about at all, though.
Okay, but that's the reality. I don't care. It doesn't matter what he's talking about. I'm talking about the reality.
That's not what he's asking. That's not what he's talking about.
Why don't you trust black people to make the best decision for their kids if you give them the money and they can send their kid where they want? Why don't you trust black people? You would trust white people. Okay, so you're for school choice.
And that
in some
check,
cases, potentially, yeah.
if that check for that child goes to the school that they want, then they go to the school that they're choosing. So like
but there's
they're
going to be schools where
then
a lot of
if
people aren't
that
choosing to go to.
school, if the school gets shut down, it doesn't matter because nobody's picking that school, obviously.
Except for the kids who are still there, right?
They still
you
get
say
that
nobody's
same
going there, but there's
check.
going to be kids there.
They still get the same check as everybody else to go pick the school they want to go to. They have equal fucking opportunity to pick where they want to go. That school that they choose to go to will now receive the funding for that child.
It just shows the priority of the parents.
Should we force shitty schools to be open and force some kids to go there? If it's ran by a shitty principal and has shitty teachers, should you say, but still we must keep it open? I would think.
I mean, if there's kids who depend on going to that school, yes.
But if we
they're
allow
not
their
going
parents,
to. Their parents can pick.
Well, you're saying they're not going to, but they currently are. So
they don't have the
Ryan is
choice right
making
now.
the military. If I may, Ryan is making the military chow card argument right now, where when you're active duty in some branches, in some places, you're forced to have a chow hall card where money is deducted out of your paycheck where you didn't agree to it, so you can have a chow hall card and you can go and like get food whenever, even if you didn't want that. And even if you make your own food and buy your own groceries and stuff, you still have to have that chow hall card. It's like forced. Well, the chow hall would go under if it wasn't for this. That's the argument that you're making right now, and it's like it's not a good argument.
But
dude.
if the school goes under because nobody chooses that school, then that school is no longer existent. It doesn't matter. The money is actually going to a school where the child is actually going to. Now the school can utilize those funds to expand the school and ensure that that child has the same education as all the other kids in that other school. If nobody picks the shitty school, the schools get shut down and the funding goes where it needs to go.
And then that's an opportunity for a new school to start up in that building later on.
Or in the area, but yeah, I mean, the point is it's the problem is with just saying, oh, it's past injustices, it's racism. You can see all the little problems with this. The system's set up to benefit whites, but somehow whites aren't on top. All these other groups are outperforming them. It's republics that won't fund schools, but in democratic areas where we increase the funding, the results, the test scores go down and down. The reading comprehension goes down. Well, therefore, we must send more, and it must be racism and Republicans' fault again. Like, it's just this never-ending stream of.
Okay, hang on, because you're absolutely cartoonishly misrepresenting me. Didn't I explicitly say like 5 times just now that we should not just send more money, but we should change how we spend the money?
Okay, so why are these Democrats spending it poorly? In what ways are they spending it poorly?
I mean, it sounds like they're not spending on AC. They should spend some more money on AC.
Okay, so if we had air conditioning,
for example,
right, and so if I could show you that, for example, Baltimore City schools have air conditioning and they're still underperforming, now what?
I mean, it's a start. That's one thing. That's just one thing I said. A lot of schools don't have ACs.
The problem is, right? A lot of these. The problem is,
what's wrong with addressing? Why is that a problem to address that? Why is that a problem for Ryan to say we should give ACs to schools? We should fund schools so they get ACs. If we have to put restrictions so that they have to spend the money on ACs, we should do that. Why is that a problem?
I don't think it is a problem. What I'm saying though is that, like in schools, right? Like you could always say there's this never-ending. Well, then we should change the funding. We should add more. Well, we should change it. We should add more. But we're not looking at like systemic issues. Like, why is it even as we increase money, right? And it, like a lot of these schools, believe it, yeah, there are ones that are in deplorable conditions, but a lot of them have like new laptops. I was reading a story the other day, and I also know anecdotal stories where I know people that work in these inner city schools. And they'll say shit like this: we give these kids new laptops and they smash them for fun, and they take them and they sell them.
How many of them are getting smashed proportionally?
The person that I was reading talking about this said over 90% of them.
90% of kids are smashing their laptops for fun.
In this school, this is what
you're obviously. I mean, this is obviously bullshit.
No, don't misrepresent me.
Show me a single article. Show me an article.
They are smashing them, or they are selling them. Those sorts of things. That's what's going.
90%.
That's what this particular teacher said.
I think you're a liar.
No, I'll even say this. Down in Baltimore, one of our companies down there sponsored, like one of a Baltimore company down there sponsored for a brand new high school for inner city, a brand new fucking high school. This was a few years back. Like everything you could ask for, top notch, super, super amazing everything, like better than any fucking county school. Just handed over, bought, paid for, handed over. And the school now they have to have cops showing up at start and finish. They're constantly having issues down there. It's like, it's a shit show. Everything's destroyed. It's just trashed. Brand new fucking school. Trashed. Trash.
So what do we do about that?
They were given literally like the science tech, all of this stuff that you could beg for, handed over. And
Sarah,
what do we do about
that? Was it a STEM designated school also? Because based on what you're saying, it sounds like it may have been. Because they get like different funding, like from.
No. It was bought and paid for by a company, a company in Baltimore, bought and paid for. I don't think it was STEM. But bought and paid for by a company. They said, you know what? We love Baltimore. We're giving back. Here's a brand new high school for you. Go. Trash.
So just to be clear, Ryan, just a couple things that I've found, right? And I'm not finding any data suggesting it's near 90%, right? That's an anecdotal story that I heard someone say, but it is a serious problem. For example, Chicago Public Schools from 2023 to 2024, January CPS Inspector General found that 77,000 laptops, iPads, and hotspots out of 330,000 were lost or stolen. So that's not broken, just lost or stolen during the school year, which cost $23 million. That was 23% of all devices. They ended up finding 8,346 of those devices outside of Illinois, including overseas, which suggests the theft or that it was resold, right? Other contexts show in places like Philadelphia, Hoboken, New Jersey, that they're saying that they could no longer continue these programs of providing laptops to students because it's so cost prohibitive because so many are being damaged, lost, or stolen.
Okay, so in terms of the lost and stolen thing, like people are like selling the laptops is what it sounds like, right?
Yes.
So why do you think these students in particular are more likely to be selling the laptops?
Because
probably poor, right?
It might be because they're poor, but nonetheless, I bet if you go to poor rural areas where they get laptops, the numbers are much declined.
So all I'm saying is that maybe there's a solution. Maybe we can find adjustments to the program. Where we still provide computing resources.
That's an opportunity that is given to them, is a laptop to utilize to learn. That's an opportunity.
So they're fucked then. The kid threw it away, so they're fucked.
We have to have an honest conversation about culture
over their shoulder so that they feel the pressure of doing right. Just having that, and they should authorize the use of potential force, just because the way their culture is they respect strength and they fear strength.
You think the white kids are also selling laptops in these schools?
I don't know.
Yes, and those kids in the urban areas have the same cultural issues as the black students.
Okay, exactly. So
I think.
So Ryan, you agree that it's a cultural issue, not necessarily.
I've said this 5 times. I agree.
An urban versus suburban versus rural versus whatever else. It's that kind of culture. It's that kind of issue.
I think
not
there is a
singular.
cultural issue. There's a cultural
Ryan,
issue.
Do you agree on that?
There's a cultural issue if people are selling the laptops. It's also an economic issue. It can be both, right?
That's true. It could be many.
So you agree that it's not?
I have a radical theory for you guys.
Yeah.
My radical theory is that this is a symptom of the political disalignment of people. I think if the Republicans would kick out a certain segment of people who support them and just shame the shit out of them, which there was an opportunity to at Charlottesville, if you would just kick them out of the fold completely, you would have a realignment of the people who actually ideologically believe with you in those minority groups. They would shift back to their ideological home, and a lot of this would shift because these two sides balance, right? Do we all agree that there's always going to be people on?
What is
that?
Wait. What does that look like? Where do they go? Where do they go next? I'm sorry, Rob. You were gonna.
No, there are highly religious people in the Hispanics and in Black circles whose ideological home should be in the right wing.
What a grotesque misrepresentation. First off, the people of Charlottesville that were racist were roundly condemned. Secondly,
how's it a grotesque misrepresentation? It was the first white supremacist rally in 20 years.
If your theory, that's not true. There's white supremacists. Fuck, in the little town that I'm in.
Not of that size.
Oh, so now it's not of that size. Okay. Nonetheless,
where's the line?
If your theory is correct, why did a higher percentage of blacks and Hispanics vote for Trump than traditional Republicans?
I mean, Trump had a multi-ethnic coalition, for sure.
But you just said that they were turned off by things like Charlottesville. If they were so turned off, why did more people of color vote for Trump than less?
Well, Rob, the vast majority voted against him still.
Rob, I think you're mistaken. I think the issue is the anti-men rhetoric that's pushed by the left. I don't think it's anything that the right is doing to go and try to stick their hands out to the other races.
That's part of it, sure.
Vote for me or you ain't black.
It is, and there is cultural, right? Like it permeates through black culture. And by the way, you could say it permeates through white culture and stuff, voting preferences as well. But like you hear stories of like you go to a black church and they're just like Trump's racist, his party's racist, you have to vote Democrat. There are people that are leaders in the black community that are overwhelmingly cultural leaders that are Democrats, right? We're now starting to see a switch, right? But what I'm being told is that like somehow blacks are being duped against voting for their own cultural issues by voting for the Democratic Party.
No. You guys are the ones who say that they're getting duped. That's your line. That's not our line.
No. You just said that when
it
comes
to
cultural issues,
when it comes to
cultural issues, other than the people at Charlottesville not being condemned enough, blacks feel more at home with the Republican Party.
No, I said that was the biggest thing that the right could do is to kick out the racists completely and utterly. And now they haven't.
What does that mean?
They're not going to that mean.
That was like
politician that's a
Charlottesville's the perfect example, right?
Trump condemned
the reason you guys get drug on Charlottesville is completely plain. It's because you had an opportunity to completely condemn those people. To completely.
What does that mean?
Completely condemned. You remember when Trump said the white supremacists?
You had a wink and a nudge.
No,
they're so bad. Wink and a nudge.
And that's it. So
Trump stand back and stand by.
Evan's going to go ahead and make his exit, and I've got another person backstage waiting to come on. So, Evan, if you'd like to make your exit.
All right. I just want to say, love the debate, love the discussion. Honestly, Ryan, I may disagree with you on a lot of things, but I really like your style and everything. I think you're a pretty good debater, Rob. I really like a lot of your points. I may disagree with.
Stop sucking his dick. God.
Sorry. I'm a part of it, but it's good to hear from you. And thank you all for having me, and Sarah.
Evan, great to meet you. Have a great night, man.
Evan. I love you. I like.
I almost came.
Have a good night, Evan. Thanks for.
I did come.
I'm proud of. Proud of Evan because he's getting more vocal now. This is the take your time, Rob. This is the thing that I love most about this panel is I've watched so many newbies or people who like are debaters, but they're just kind of like just getting their feet wet, and I'm watching them grow and grow and grow, and it's beautiful to see this happen in that aspect. And I'm really proud of Evan because I've yelled at him enough times to start talking, and now he's fucking talking, and I'm proud of it.
Zach.
Isn't that great?
Oh,
I think that's great.
Zach, welcome. He's here. What's up, Zach?
And wow,
Zach is here. If somebody talks over while Zach's thing is playing, I am gonna yell. Just
is there something particular for you, Zach? Do you have like
he has a voice? He's nonverbal. He plays. He types it. And
thanks for having me on. I have cerebral palsy, so I use an iPad to communicate. Here's what I think. I'm so tired of the left and their thinking. They don't understand that all cultures have different levels of poverty. It's all about me, and F everyone else. You understand that the DNC used someone like me in the convention under Kamala, and instead of letting him speak for himself, a speaker spoke for him. That's disgusting and discriminatory.
All right.
Wow.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Hell yeah, dude.
Unique just to
they
let you
spoke
know.
For him,
yeah,
I want to know if when they spoke for him, were they actually like speaking? Was he trying to say something different than what they communicated, or were they communicating the things that he asked to be communicated?
He's going to tell you.
Give him just a moment. He has to type it.
I'm going to give him a moment while he's taking that time to type that. I'll give him the time to type. The real Robert Flowers says with the Big Ten, Robert Flowers finds it hilarious that Ryan says, I am sorry that you don't know what racism means, while also stating that you can't be racist to a white person. Logic 101, Robert Flowers out.
Yeah, I mean, I've been very clear that we're using racism in a few different ways. And when I say that I'm just referring to prejudice against white people as a different thing than what I'm referring to when I talk about racism, and I can still condemn that prejudice against white people, and people will still pearl clutch and be like, oh, well, you have to call it racism. I think they're just tone policing, and I don't really care. I'm not going to entertain it.
But it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. Kokomo, and I did ask for reparations in the chat, by the way, and the chat did provide. Thank you to all of you who donated for my reparations for having to tolerate this fucking panel. I love you all, though. This is fun. I actually went and cracked open another one just because. Kokomo since 15 says,
cheers.
I missed most of it today, but here's some booze money for you, Sarah. Thank you so much. Jeremy Ryan says, here's some reparations, Sarah. Send Tweaker to the back simply for being annoying. More annoying than Ryan, Effigy, and Grumple combined. I will say, Grumple, it's not you. It's your fucking mic. For some, it's like you have this delay, and then you're talking over, and then it's really loud, and then it takes you like a 3-second delay to figure out that somebody else was already talking. And it's not you. It's
I'm sorry, I'm not that bright.
See? Only Mr. Bill sends reparations for the White Claw that Ryan calls. Oh, is my White Claw racist?
I love White Claw. I'd say I'm a big White Claw fan person. I actually prefer Truly, but White Claws are fun.
I do too. I like Trulies as well. Justin with the Big 5 says, a little more reparations for you, Sarah, for having to listen to Ryan fumble his way through this debate. And Alexander with the Big 20 says, the fundamental issue is mobility. Poor people often need nearby schools or buses to get their kids to school. The ones who can travel further will leave. The rest will be left behind in a failed school. Not if they have the funding sent right to that school. Now they can afford the buses to get them there.
If the voucher includes busing, I mean, that's a very small thing.
Mm-hmm. Because busing is included, even for my own children, to get them to their school. That's all included in the taxpayers'
To
dollar.
be fair, what he's saying is, like, if the only good school was 50 minutes away, it's unreasonable to expect that you would send your kid on a bus, even if you had a voucher, right? But my answer to that would be, there would be a generational lag. That's true. But the problem is right now, because these schools are government schools and you're not allowed to have choice, there's no competition. And without competition, that means there's no consequences for poor schools, which means that there's not going to be a change, which is why these schools get worse and worse. The only way out of that cycle is to have competition. It's similar to
schools.
if you look at it like a restaurant, right? Like if you were like, you're only allowed to eat at the restaurant in your town, you're only allowed, and it's a shitty restaurant, that restaurant has no incentive to get better, because it's like, hey, you got to come here. We're the only game in town.
Right. Yeah. It's,
right.
it's opening up the
Zach is
market.
Zach is ready to answer now. If y'all could give him just a moment.
Listen.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Actually, he couldn't get his own feelings out there. So for me, that's very disrespectful. It was an act for Democrats to look better, like the "you're not black if you don't vote for me."
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I was going to say, you need prepping. My job.
Well, can I respond first before you go into the next thing? I mean, I'm not.
Wait, Zach, was your thing over?
It was directed at me. He was talking to me, right?
That's right.
Zach, was your thing done?
It sounded like it. Yeah. Thanks,
So,
Zach.
Sometimes he has pauses.
That's okay.
He says the person didn't get to speak for themselves. I understand that someone else talked for him. What I would require some evidence that he actually wanted to say something other than what was presented, right? That sounds like something you're just asserting, but I don't know if you can demonstrate that. And I actually don't believe you can.
But
he's coming at you, Ryan.
Wrecked. Got me then. Sorry for challenging you, yeah.
You want to fight? All right. While he's on that, Rob, to you. I know you wanted to respond to that.
I was just gonna say, you need prepping. My job for fucking 17 years was working with adults with disabilities like autism, many of which were nonverbal. And I noticed this a lot when I was there. Like, there's this perspective from like left-wing people, this like bigotry of low expectations and tokenism, where it's like, oh, we could look like we're really great people by, showcasing how, and I thought it was all bullshit. The people I worked with were some of the funniest fucking insulting me. My man that I worked with forever, like constantly tell me I was a fat piece of shit and stuff, and we would laugh at each other. It was fucking great. But then all of a sudden, like, you get with these people that are supposedly like professionals, these left-wing people, and they're talking to them like they're fucking children, right? And it's like this ridiculous bigotry of low expectations. And then, oh, do you want to come to this fundraising event we have, and we'll proudly put you up there? And I would go with my person to those events, and they wouldn't leave him talk. It was just like they'd sit him there and be like, look at these pictures, and clap, clap, clap. And it's like, meanwhile, granted, my guy wanted to talk about shit that wouldn't have necessarily helped the fundraiser, but he had shit that was very important to him. He wanted to talk about how he didn't get to go bowling enough, and this other stuff that was important to him. But instead, he was used as a token. Now, that's not political, but you can quickly see how someone interested in garnering sympathy for politics would use that sort of shit.
I kind of feel like that transcends party lines, though. I feel like the Republicans do their fair share of tokenism as well. That's just kind of something that's
true.
Like the brain cancer kid at
In this context, Zach is one of the most intelligent people that I've met in the online panel space at all. We had an amazing panel about prepping and like just getting ready for disasters or anything just recently. The only thing is he has a physical disability that makes him nonverbal. You have to listen to what his brain is trying to say, which he can type.
That's fair.
Yeah, which is why I'm looking forward to him
this is my
providing the
friend.
evidence to that person. Which is why I'm looking forward to him providing the evidence.
I'll physically fight to defend him.
Not getting okay. So which is why I'm looking forward to hearing him present the evidence that the person at the DNC was actually trying to say something other than what the person speaking for them said.
It doesn't
Zach,
matter if
are
it was
you
trying
ready?
to speak anything else.
Got you, Zach.
Are you ready? Do you have one for us?
If you're ready, I'll turn my mic up to 3,000% and I'll yell over everybody until either third me or
It's already a jump scare in microphone form.
Zach, do you have a button ready for us? If not, I'll read some super chats.
Okay, Ryan, you talk out your ash like every fucking left liberal person.
Oh, I want
I
that.
love you, Zach, dude.
I talk out my ass because I asked you to provide evidence for your claim. Okay.
Yes, true.
Walks out his ass and he eats nothing but shit.
Ryan, if I can, would it matter? Like, let me ask you this, Ryan.
Zach, you're the best, bro. I love you so much.
In all seriousness, Ryan, would it matter? Like, for example,
Of course it would.
If
I would condemn it if he was trying to say something different than what they said for him. I would condemn it, absolutely.
But wait, here's why it doesn't matter. What if I said everything you were going to say and didn't give you a chance to speak it yourself? Would that piss you off, even if I was saying exactly what you were going to say?
Well, I mean, again, if we had agreed on that beforehand, then no, I wouldn't be upset.
But what if we didn't agree? What if you were just like, hey, I'm going to come on, and I didn't say that you would have a chance to speak, but I was like, I know all Ryan's arguments. I'll make them for him. And you at the end of it were like, yeah, Rob did make all the arguments I was going to make. Still, wouldn't it piss you off that I felt ordained to speak for you?
So do you have evidence that that's what happened here?
I don't know, but I'm rebutting your specific claim here. I don't know of this instance. Your claim was you need to provide evidence that they said something that he didn't want to say. I'm saying that's not necessarily true.
Okay,
it would
let
still
me be clear.
offensive.
I'll be more specific because you're right. I left the room, okay, for them to be just like tricking him into telling him they were going to let him say whatever he wanted, and they got up there and they said the thing that they knew he was going to say anyway. What I'm saying is that if it's the case that he knew when he went up there, someone was going to talk for him and say the things that he wanted to say, then I have no problem with that. If he went up there intending to talk and they didn't let him, I do have a problem with that. Very simple.
All right. Well, I don't know the fucking example. I'm just saying that like there's a difference because that is something that I've noticed is frustrating with people that are nonverbal, that people pretend that they have to speak for them, and oftentimes that's bullshit. Even if you're saying accurately what they want you to hear, it's still bullshit.
So ask that question directly to Zach.
I think
I would say ask
Zach,
that question directly.
I was gonna say, Zach,
Zach,
you have a
something
button for us? Let's do it. Not yet. All right, I'll wait.
He was just agreeing.
I'll wait. And let me read these out. Kissy Cat comes in with a big 5. She says the shitty county schools where I'm from require over an hour bus ride. Never mind a good school. And I will say, I went to a high school out in Podunk, nowhere, Missouri. where there was 1.5 light.
Misery.
Misery. I always say I went from Maryland to Misery.
Misery,
and there were some students. I was reluctant. I lived really close to my school, but there were some of my friends that took a 45-minute bus ride after already taking a 30-minute bus ride. They had to bus ride from one to another to get to high school. Distance is not something we let necessarily get in our way. Alexander says with a big 20, Rob, you read me right. I appreciate it. It would definitely be an issue for a little while, probably much better in the long run, though. Wonder if we could bridge that gap somehow or just have to screw some people over.
Well, that's the problem. That, like, when you're talking about massive changes in policies, like, if we're honest, any government policy, no matter how well intended, is going to have winners and losers. Like, I don't like Obamacare, but it's undeniable that Obamacare benefited some people and also cost some people. So anytime you're talking about changing some sort of policy where there's government intervention, there's going to be people that it sucks for. But the question is, you have to ask yourself, well, what is the best long-term solution? Do we just continue with a shitty system? Do we try to find a way to gradually transition? But yeah, I mean, there are certainly problems with just being like, let's get rid of the Department of Education, let's just do all private schools, etc. Yeah, there are problems with that, but I think that the benefits far outweigh the negatives, because we could see, particularly, I find it to be offensive to people in the inner city, these schools, of how the lack of opportunities that they're getting. We just accept it. And by the way, let's not shit ourselves. It's in Democrat-ran areas. Oh, well, that's just the way the schools are. Then we churn out these kids that have like no reading skills, no math skills. And then we wonder why generationally they're not able to get good jobs. And we just say, well, it's racism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
I
raised my 7 children
I don't just say
off grid, and
clear.
My 7 children were homeschooled.
I wasn't done reading. The Tard Wrangler with the big 5 says, Daddy is here. Ryan, you had a response.
Children.
Ryan, did you have a response to this one?
No, I can see a world where the voucher system is beneficial in certain ways, and I can see a world where it's disastrous. So I would want, if we're going to do something like that, I would want to make sure that we don't have to deal with some kids just getting fucked over. That's what I would be concerned about. I don't think that just because some schools are not doing as well as they could be, that we should then watch those schools diminish to absolutely nothingness and let the kids who are stuck there suffer until they just find finally a better school gets established somewhere near enough, and we just hope that happens, because the market, I would just rather we try to fix the problems with schools.
Instead, shouldn't we force that school to do fucking better?
I'd be okay with that as well. I want support to make sure that we can do that.
If that school actually, fixes its shit and does better, then maybe that would actually change the entirety of the dynamics altogether.
This is
that's what I'm advocating for.
Do you think the elite,
Ryan, if it's already on fire, why not let it burn?
Do you think they send their children to?
Because there's kids inside, Grumple.
Or you think
no, it's a metaphorical thing that let it just burn down.
He doesn't understand metaphors.
All right, Zach, do you have a yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, but this is
Sarah,
not you, Rocky. Go ahead, Rob.
It's skirting the issue anyways. The real problem is there's significant cultural aspects. It won't matter if you don't fix those. The fact that there are no male role models in many of these black kids' lives, the fact that there is culture that incentivizes that it's white to be on time and it's white to be educated, and this is the shit that's pushed. Those are the systemic problems. And unless you've been in these inner city schools or know someone that has that can talk about how fucking crazy they get, until you solve those behavioral problems, it won't matter if you have school choice or if you're sending cool laptops and shit like that. There's a more systemic problem that needs to be worked on first.
There's problems that have to be worked on alongside those things.
I know it, but it really sucks though to try and get those role models right when every time we put a person of color in prominence, somebody screams DEI, right? How are we going to get those DUI? People?
Why are we screaming it? There's a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode about this, right? Where there's a black doctor that Larry has, and Larry's like, oh shit, I wonder if he's DEI or not. The reason people scream DEI is because so many were put there for DEI. Yes, one of the people that are most negatively affected by DEI are actual minorities through their own talent and education that we're able to achieve. Now people suspect that they were put there for skin color because so many people like you guys want to put people there for skin color.
Can you name one
Ryan,
higher?
you're not going to do anything, Ryan. Zach has things to say.
It's okay. I was going to let that topic roll for a couple seconds.
Yeah, Ryan introduced a new thing. It was Effigy and Rob. And my Sarah, if I'm doing something,
all right, with it, but it's okay. I lost the thought now. This show, Rumple.
Okay, well, I mean, sorry if you would like me to. No, Zach, go ahead. Stupid.
But yes.
Oh, Zach, I mean, you left.
Everybody shut up. Zach, you have a button for us. Shut up, Rocky.
For me, I don't want any fucking other person talking for me. Go watch the clip of the DNC and make your own decision. From my standpoint, that was not his thinking or anything. They used him as a token, like, look at me, we're inclusive. I'm sorry, but no.
Yeah.
I think
it just sounds like you're speculating about that, though. It doesn't sound like you know that. You're just asserting that he
sounds like you're speculating. He's asking you to watch it.
I mean, we can. I remember. I've seen the clip. I know what we're referring to. I did watch it at the time.
Ryan, were you about to ask me to name a person that was installed in a position based on skin color?
Yeah, or some evidence that some company's doing that practice.
Obama.
How about Supreme Court Justice Jackson? That was picked
You think
specifically
she's
for being a
you think
black
she's
woman.
so you think she's not qualified to be on the Supreme Court?
It wouldn't matter. Wasn't the qualification that was prima facie that she was a black woman? Isn't that what Biden said? Isn't that why Kamala Harris was chosen?
I think that's okay.
It doesn't matter if you think it's okay. The problem is that that's a DIR. She was put there because she's a black woman. It doesn't matter. She was put there because she's a. It does not matter.
If she's qualified, then who cares if she's if
like being black was part of it? It answers your question. She was specifically. Do you think there were other people qualified?
Probably other black women too.
Do you think there were white men that were qualified?
Potentially.
So why was she picked over them?
Why not?
Well, we know why, because Biden told us she was picked for being a black woman.
Okay. Well, I mean, black women make up more than 1/9 of the country, so why not say? I mean, probably makes sense that we have at least 1/9 of the Supreme Court representing black women's interests, right?
Okay. Why? So you assume just because someone's a black woman that they quote represent the
why the
interest of
fuck is
other
the Supreme
women?
Court justice representing any interest for anybody?
Well, I mean, okay. To be fair, most people are getting mad at like Amy Coney Barrett when she doesn't represent.
Experience is pretty important for a judge, right?
But
why would a black experience be important for looking at the Constitution and determining whether or not laws?
Anyone's lived experience is important for how they view the law, right?
Okay, so then explain to me how a black woman's perspective. We just had Amy Coney Barrett say that Jackson was grotesquely wrong.
You don't think a right winger would say that a right wing woman's experience is important to have on the court?
I think that, in fact, Amy Coney Barrett was picked for being a woman, which was also DEI, which Trump did, and that's still wrong, right?
That's pretty gay.
It's wrong because of what? Why is it wrong?
Because we should not be picking people based on quotas like that. If we pick the most qualified person and it happens to be a woman, fine. If we instead limit the pool of people we're looking for to only women, then what will happen will be that we limit ourselves out of having the best possible candidates.
What if you limit qualified people and then you pick the woman?
If doesn't mean
that
we should be.
Why is that a problem?
Shouldn't we be picking the most qualified person? Shouldn't it be on merit?
What if you have an array of the most qualified people and then you pick the black woman? What's wrong with that?
All right. How are they all the most qualified? There's only one that's the most qualified.
If that black woman is
people have different strengths.
Okay, no.
Ryan, your logic is fallacious at the outset.
Hold on. You're taking 100 people and you're separating them into like 5 different categories, and you're saying, give me the top one of each category, right? But then the top one of each category, they may actually be all sitting at the very, very bottom of the actual list, when like maybe one specific category, they actually happen to all be the top 5. It doesn't make any sense, Ryan, to sit there and array them and then say, give me the top black female, give me the top Asian female, give me the top white man, give me the top black man. It doesn't make any sense. To me, I say give me the top 5.
Okay, well, there's not always an objective measurement for who's the absolute top number 1 candidate or top 5 candidates, right? But you can have a bunch of people who meet the qualifications that you're looking for, right? And then you can look at them and be like, oh, well, any of these people would be pretty good. Why not just pick the black one? What's wrong with that?
Because if it was a random choice or if you had some sort of meritocratic reason to do so, but if you're picking based on an immutable characteristic, that's racism. You shouldn't.
It's racism to put a black woman on the Supreme Court when there's never been a black woman on the Supreme Court. That's racism.
To put a woman.
Do you guys see how absurd this is, right?
I mean,
this is why this working definition of racism is so bullshit. It's racist. Black woman on the Supreme Court is what Rob just told you. Let that sit.
There's the spur.
It is racist.
You're making it up.
It is racist to say put a black woman on the panel. Like it is racist.
It's 100% racist.
Put a black woman on the Supreme Court. You heard it here first, okay?
No,
it's 100% racist to say.
If I could defend my own statement, I would appreciate it. It is racist to exclude people because of their skin color. A factor that they had no factor in controlling. That is an immutable characteristic. If I said this gay person is qualified, but I must have a straight person for the Supreme Court, you would say that's bigoted. Even if they were equally qualified, you'd say you shouldn't be able to do that. You shouldn't be able to discriminate based on their sexual orientation. If I said this white person and black person are equally qualified, but I want to pick the white person because I want a white person, you would say that's racism. You should not be allowed to discriminate against that black person. But for some reason, if there are 2 equal qualified people and I say I'm picking the black person because I just feel like having a black person, then that's not racism. That's good.
What if you're picking the black person because there's never been another black woman on the Supreme Court?
That would be racism.
If you're excluding people,
that's literally racism.
Joe Biden, you racist.
There you go. There's the Spurg again. There's the just filibustering.
The Spurg to make fun of you, for saying that it's racist to put a black woman on the Supreme Court. You realize how stupid that is.
I wasn't making fun of you.
Everybody stop for a second.
I'm making fun of you.
Hold on. You're not hearing it. It would be racist to say I'm not choosing the white person because I want to put the black person on the panel. That's what that is racism. I'm specifically going to exclude the white person, the Asian person, the Jewish person, the whatever person, just because I have to put a black person on there. That is racism.
That's not racism. You're saying that can't be racist against white people, Sarah.
So you're saying that
as Ryan says, you can't be racist against white people. So
you're saying that in this case we're implicitly being racist against white people because if we look at an array of qualified people, they're all qualified. You know, they might have different strengths and weaknesses, but they're all pretty much qualified for the Supreme Court. And we go, hey, well, there's never been a black woman on the Supreme Court. That could probably be good. And we pick that person. That's racist against white people.
No. You said the most qualified. And then you jump back and forth.
I said a list of the most qualified
and people that are like maybe good enough to fill the role. That's what
I'm saying. Everyone, we're looking at a list of people and they're all perfectly qualified to be on the Supreme Court.
It's a red herring. It's a red herring for 2 reasons. One, like, yes, it would still be racist to exclude people based on immutable characteristics like their skin color. Second, that's not how, if you remember how we got to this conversation, you asked me to show you anyone that got a job based on skin color. The literal reference I gave was Joe Biden saying, I am picking a black woman. He did not do what you're suggesting. He didn't say, I'm just going to pick the best 100 people. Oh, one of them happens to be a black woman. I'll go with her. He said, at the onset, I will only be looking at black women. That's what he said. That's DEI. And when we said, oh, yes, people do wonder, did you get that job because you're a black woman or did you get that job because you're qualified? You said, show me one time that's ever happened.
You think Mike Pence is DEI hire?
No.
Why not?
Jasmine Crockett said herself she was a DEI hire. How about that shit?
We're not talking about her.
I know we're not talking about her because it doesn't fit your narrative right now.
No, because she got elected.
Mike Pence because he was the most qualified or because he appealed to white evangelicals?
I think that there were probably reasons that he picked that had to do with evangelicals. But appealing to white evangelicals, like because of his religion and shit like that, it's different.
I have a question. So if we assume that we got this giant pool of candidates that are all different colors, all different races, all different backgrounds, and we deem them all as qualified. Let's just call it pizza for now. I have this array of pizza, and I choose the pepperoni pizza as my preference among this pizza, does it mean that I hate
racist.
all other flavors of pizza, or that I'm discriminating against all the flavors of pizza?
No, pizza, your taste when it comes to inanimate objects are different than excluding people because of your preference for immutable characteristics. I just want to be clear, animated effigy, are you really telling me that if I was president of the United States and got to pick a Supreme Court and there were two finalists and one was a gay black woman and the other was a straight white man, and I said, they're equally qualified, but I really want a straight white man, you would say, oh, that's not bigotry or racism at all. That's what you would say.
Wait, Rob,
I've never claimed bigotry or racism for all of the white
Rob,
dudes
what
on
I
the Supreme Court from the right now.
I would say effigy. It's just like me liking pepperoni pizza. Same thing, right?
Rob, what I got out of effigy's question is that he wanted to hire pepperoni pizza to be a Supreme Court justice.
That's what I heard.
Pizza.
So what about
that's what I heard.
Ryan, if I could answer one other question or one other point on your example. Choosing someone to run is different than appointing someone to a government position. That's different. So you can expect that there are people that are running for office and picking strategies to run for office. That's different than appointing someone to the job, arguably the highest government official that can be appointed. In this point, it is a Supreme Court justice picking someone because, and I'm also blaming Trump. He picked Amy Coney Barrett for being a woman. He said that. That's bullshit. You asked
Doesn't the implication of all this
men, are you okay?
say that it's only okay to pick men or white men for these positions?
What's that?
Like just because Amy Coney Barrett's a woman means like by default it's a DEI, it's diversity.
Exactly.
Therefore, the only real choice you can ever have is a man or a white man.
If I say I only want straight white men, that's who I'm looking at, and then I pick a straight white man and I say, but isn't he qualified? How dare you suggest
They're all
I pick him for
qualified.
being a straight white
They're
man?
all qualified. You're the one going off on the preference beyond the qualification.
Oh my God!
They're all qualified.
Give me 30 seconds. They said we are picking a black woman. They said we are picking a woman. Then post hoc saying, but they're qualified.
Yes, but the implication is that they are already full of qualified people.
No, bullshit. If you say I'm picking
yes,
no implication.
Absolutely
this is okay. Then I just want to be clear. You are perfectly fine if Trump says I'm only picking white men for positions. As long as we can say that they're qualified, you would say perfectly fine. That's not racism. They were qualified.
I mean, it's his preference, sure.
You were a liar, and you know it.
Rob got it done, and that was 20 seconds, not 30.
I was hoping you were
budget and over-delivered.
Most
What about
men
the
are
whole-
quicker than they say they'll be.
I can say that I have no expectation that Trump would ever put a black woman on the court. I can say that honestly.
Okay, well, he hired a black woman for pardon czar, which was a position he created for her, right?
I stand by my statement.
I mean,
she
so like
who gets
Trump
pardons.
said, it's just
Okay.
we don't talk about it when Trump appoints gay people or women or black people. It's never national
Clarence
news.
Thomas.
When Democrats do it, oh my God, this is the first black woman to be alderman since we had a season with average of 3 inches of rain a month. Wow, what an incredible achievement!
Hey,
the
Rob,
Democrats did.
it'd be first black,
People point it out
lesbian,
anytime, that's the
non-Jewish, binary, blah, blah, blah. But what about the whole heart attack or the heart surgery argument where you say, all right, you got 30 surgeons. All right. They're all qualified. Some of them have had 10 years, some 20, some 30. You're going to go with anybody on that list, right? Are you going to pick the black guy who has 5 years or the white guy who has 20?
Do you think you're the best qualified to make that decision as the person getting operated on?
Yes, actually.
If there's a white guy with 20 years and a black guy with 20 years, who do you pick?
You choose who you want to do your medical. Like that's a wild. That's a.
Well, then
Do you choose the guy who makes you feel better? Or do you choose the guy who has like the specific expertise in your problem?
But then it also comes down to sitting with each one, asking like their opinions on the matter, and then you also get a second opinion and a third opinion, and who comes most referred, and blah blah blah. And Kissy Cat sends in her reparations and says, "I'm so sorry, Sarah. You all should be sending more reparations. I'm incredibly discouraged." And then she follows up to call you all pizzaists. How dare you shame the cheese pizza?
I do not like pizza with
pineapple
olives.
Pizza, the ham pizza.
Why? Because they're black, Ryan?
Black olives, Ryan.
Because they're black? I'm pretty sure that's exactly why. Because you're legitimately the most racist person I think I've seen on the panel.
Go
ahead, Rob.
You guys are the ones arguing that like the black women are inherently not qualified enough to be on the Supreme Court. So
No, DEI hires not qualified.
Ryan, nobody said that at all. Nope, nobody
All of you
ever
implied
said
it,
that.
and that a woman is less qualified.
No, it wasn't even implied.
Yeah,
no,
I'll
Ryan,
both
those were
Okay,
Ryan,
let
nobody
me,
said
let
it.
me, let
None
me.
of that ever happened.
It's all right. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
you did.
Ryan is gaslighting right now.
The fuck up, Grumble.
I'm sorry.
Fix your headphones. It's got to be your fucking headphones that you can't hear every other fucking person on this panel goddamn talking. Stop it.
No, it's actual hearing damage. I'm sorry. It's.
Then
I was listening to Ryan.
find a new
I'm sorry.
place to listen to people. Oh
Get
my
hearing
god.
aid. Hearing. No, I was just going to say real quick, like Ryan and Effigy, you guys are fucking up the Democratic talking points. Are you unaware of the talking points? Speaking of the doctors, that actually black people that go to black doctors have far better outcomes, which would imply the inverse would also be true, that white people that go to white doctors would also have better outcomes. So could you blame Trippy if he decided to go with the white doctor?
I don't think that.
I don't care if you seek out a white doctor.
The inverse.
Yeah, people have all kinds of reasons for their preferences.
But
Like,
listen,
I had
it's
an eye
not a matter.
surgery.
It's
I
not a
didn't get
matter of preferences and them having the right to choose their preference. It's a matter of the sort of disparage or the sort of sneering at, like, why would you assume the white person would be better? Why would anyone assume that? Now, it turns out that studies about black doctors being best for black families is absolute total bullshit. And yet that's not stopped it from being repeated over and over. Because, like, when you look at the data, it turns out that the study was flawed in multiple ways. But what's the implication here? That white doctors that are performing...
Where's this study published, and why should we take Rob's word that it's a bad study?
Well, I think we should take my word about the study because I fucking shellacked you on every single thing that I said in the first portion of the debate, and I was right about almost damn near everything I say. That's number one.
Hey.
And number two, what would the implication
Missing
be
a lot
otherwise?
of key nuance that I covered when I was going through and clarifying
So
things.
what's the implication? Some white heart surgeon just doesn't give a shit enough about black people, so he's performing poorer on her?
I think it's more complex than that.
Give me an example of why it would be.
I mean, I don't know what the data said. I don't know why you're asserting that it's not true. Like, you can tell me what the flaws in the data were.
You keep doing this. You're like, oh, I don't know.
I asked you what was wrong with the data. You said it was bad data. I asked you why. You said it was just bad, and I should just take your word for it because you owned me.
Right. Well, Alexander sends in the big 20 to say, Ryan, clarify for me if there was a board of all black men, and out of two choices, white man and black man, they say they want a black man because they don't think a white man would fit in. Is it a problem for you?
Yeah, probably, yeah. That'd be prejudice that I wouldn't endorse.
Okay. Now going back to the point, like you do this all
quick,
night. You've done this.
before you resume, quick question for Rob and Ryan.
Fucking loud.
I'll turn it. I have to manually adjust it the entire time. If I'm a Hispanic, and because I am, and I want either a Jewish or Asian person to be a doctor for me, is that racist?
No.
Yes.
I just don't care.
No. You can have all sorts of reasons. It's not racist. Right?
It might be. You might have racist reasons. I don't know your reasons. They might be racist.
There are
positive
racist things, right? Like you can have positive stereotypes.
They get better grades,
in a weird way, right?
Culturally, they just study better.
Okay,
what
get
I'm
back
saying
to
is,
the thought, Rob.
Be a better doctor, right?
I was just saying, Ryan's done this all night.
My bad.
We'll be like, what are the potential reasons for this? Right? You'll say like there could be other reasons.
And I refuse to speculate, unlike you.
I'm like, name one, and you're like, I can't. So if I said like, the reason that the cop was chasing that black man was because that black man's name was Jim, and he hates people named Jen. And Ryan said that's absurd. There could be other reasons. And I said name one, and he'd say I can't think of one. That's it. Like, you see the absurdity? Just give one. Of course, your speculation may be incorrect, but you can't.
If I can't come up with something on the spot to explain like data that you're alleging is false, how is it on me to do that? Why is that my responsibility?
It's not you coming up with the data on alleging it's false. It's repeatedly I'll say something and say there's only one possible hypothetical explanation that I can come up with. Can anyone think of a different one? Ryan, can you? So what I'm saying is, if this study is true, the implications is that white doctors are racist against blacks. They don't give a shit against blacks. What would it be?
What did the study suggest? What did the study say before you discredited it?
It said that people that went to black doctors had better outcomes.
And you're saying that is not true.
That's correct. That is what I'm saying. But
was it better or was it preferable? Which word did they use?
Better. They had better outcomes. But if it was true,
objectively better,
what would the explanation be for why that's true? That's what I'm asking.
I don't know. I'm curious. I'd be curious what the explanation is.
If they were the ones who reported, it could have just been their preferable outcomes, right? And they just said that it was better.
So it could be that the study's flawed.
I mean, that is one possibility. Yes, I agree. That's one possibility.
Study flawed, one possibility. Because these doctors are racist is number 2. What would the third explanation be?
I don't think that I owe you a list of explanations, and I don't think that even if I could, that it would be exhausted by any means. Like there's
they had bad outcomes measurably when they went to white doctors, right?
Yeah, they could just have worse outcome, and like that.
I mean, at some point,
there could be some unexplained variable that we haven't
saying.
identified, right?
But that's what that's what they're saying. But why? Why? What are the possible explanations?
I don't claim to know, and I'm not interested in speculating. I would want to know what the actual data said.
Well, we have this disparagement in other factors, right? There are certain dynamics between men where they think that other men do not hear them, and when they talk about pain to other male doctors, there's some people who believe stuff like that, and there's studies on that. But again, there's all kinds of dynamics when you're talking doctors.
That would be that there were other variables that the study was flawed, right? If the study's true,
there are tons of variables.
Right, but the variables could mean that the study is flawed. But if it's not flawed, then what other explanation could it be than white doctors, like a white heart surgeon, a white brain surgeon, are racist?
Fuck doctors.
There's no possible explanation that I'm aware of other than that. That's what I'm saying.
Fuck all the doctors. They're all
again. There could be something that just neither of us are thinking of right now. And
or there's maybe the exact same thing you were saying, but there might be a bias that is less intentional, right?
But it would still have to do with racism.
Sure, on some level, sure.
Okay.
Trump said the F-bomb.
True.
Yeah, Trump did
say
that.
True. He did.
He did. Yeah.
Relevance. But
that's what I
said. I said, fuck all the doctors because they're all. I know how to cure myself better than all them fucking doctors.
And I'm allowed to say,
do you?
Trump said it. True.
I'm just waiting on the point.
Diabetes. Says the man who was kept alive by experimental medicine when he got a plague.
So, okay, this is not related. I just want to make sure I can get this in because this discussion is going nowhere. Rob, so while I was in the back,
does my unit look racist?
No, it does not, sir. While I was in the back, I did a little bit of reading into her report, and it seems like the reason that they didn't charge Biden for giving classified information to the ghostwriter is because, or ghostwriter, not ghostwriter. Oh my god, is because it was done over 3 spans of 3 periods of time. Biden said that this one section of the notebook was probably classified in the first meeting and then skipped over it while he was reading for the memoir. And then at a later meeting, because he was a fucking dementia-riddled 80-year-old, read the part that may have been classified.
It's not an excuse.
At a later. Well, no, it's not an excuse. That's the reason that the investor general gave. But it's not that. It's not as simple as he said it was classified and then he read it anyway. It was that he said it was classified in one meeting and then read it in another.
But
meeting.
you're aware that if that portion was classified, then the document itself is classified. Skipping the words that you think are classified, he would still know that it was the document itself was classified. Correct?
So it's not. I don't know if it's as clear if the document itself is classified because I'm pretty sure the thing that he read out was.
I could explain.
Well, please.
I had to go through classified document training. I can explain it if you would like.
I would like to finish my sentence. So these were writings in a notebook. So it's not my impression that everything in the notebook was classified. It's just my impression that classified information was in the notebook, and there were certain sections that he could not read from the notebook because it was transcriptions of classified information.
Technically, the entire document becomes class at whatever the highest level that it was at the time. That's how that works.
I'm saying I don't know if the notebook was classified as much as
the entire notebook becomes, if there's one page in there that has classified information, the entire notebook becomes class at that level.
I mean,
FYI.
That's potentially true, but I mean, in order to get a charge,
that's how it works.
The thing that I'm illustrating is this isn't willingness. This isn't a willingness to distribute classified information, and it's not comparable to what Trump did.
So to answer your, it's still. Never mind. I was going to go back to Ryan.
If I may, Rob, just was it willingness when he stole documents from skiffs as a senator? Was that willingness?
It's not
Rob,
he wasn't charged with that. It's not my impression that it was a willing take home thing.
When he illegally removed documents folded, then he snuck into his pocket and then removed from skiffs secured compartmentalized information facilities.
Can you show me anything about that?
It's totally the same as 64 boxes worth.
I just want to go back to this. I want to go back to what Rinyeld said here, right? And 2 things.
I can.
It's absurd, right, to think that this is somehow not as bad as what Trump did, right, because he read it in different portions. That's an absurdity. But second, the only explanation that Rinyal could give is when he literally read the portion he knew it was classified, it's okay because he was dementia-addled. I'm sorry that's not...
No, it's not quite that. That feels like a misrepresentation. What I'm saying is that he said it was classified, and then he skipped over it on that day, and then another day, he read the part that he said was classified on a previous day. That's very separate than Trump saying, this is classified. I could have declassified, but I didn't, but here it is.
Did he read it?
Did what, Biden?
Did Trump read that to the people? The classified document that he was holding?
I'm pretty sure that he was showing it to the people. That's what the audio suggests.
Did they have a chance to read it?
Did he have a chance to read it?
Right.
I don't know.
What if he had his thumb over the portion that may have been classified?
That's not what the audio suggests.
What do you mean?
That's not what the audio suggests. Why would you say
the audio didn't suggest, look, you can read the writings right now that are classified and I'm showing it to you. He said, this is classified. And didn't just waving it around wouldn't be right. He didn't show it to them to read. Biden said this is probably classified, skipped a couple words when the whole document was classified. You're like, well, maybe he wouldn't have known that. Then he later went back and read the portion that he himself said was classified.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know where this claim of Donald Trump just picked up the one document and then waved it around and that was the only distribution. I'm pretty sure that's not true.
Oh, show me the evidence.
Yeah,
that's what the audio portion was. The audio portion wasn't him reading the document. It doesn't seem to suggest that he was handing it to them for them to read. He said, this document right here. Now, maybe he did hand it to people to read, but that's not the impression I got from the audio portion you're talking about.
In the indictment, it claims that he was showing it to the reporters.
Right. Would this be me showing you this? Yeah, it would be.
It depends.
Did they read it?
I don't know if that's the way that they're using it in the indictment.
But again, there's no, like, it sounds like the audio is basically like him saying, blah, 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 blah. And this shit here, I should have declassified it right here. It's classified. That doesn't show that he was like, and let me read this passage here. Or here, go ahead and read it. Right? It seems...
For eyes only, though, right? Because if you show it to a reporter, then they got it on video, then they could freeze frame it and just read all of it, right? Like they've got it.
Trump showed and described a plan of attack. Trump said that he was prepared. It was prepared for him by the Department of Defense and a senior military official. Trump told the individuals it was highly confidential and secret, and as president,
it doesn't matter.
Wait,
confidential is the lowest secret. No, wait, confidential is the lowest classification.
It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to his argument. It doesn't matter. That would be
no, that does matter. But also, the president of the United States can, at will, change the classification of documents.
Wrong.
Anything.
Wrong. There's a process.
Debate lesson. I gave this in a debate class the other day. You should always try to win an argument through the path of least resistance. And so I see this repeatedly. Like Rinyald's like, oh well, you know, we're talking.
I can explain how it works if y'all want to.
But what you're saying then is you're going to a completely different argument. Now you have to win the argument, and there is a robust argument on both sides as to whether or not the president can declassify something at will just by saying it's declassified. There are solid arguments on both sides. The problem is that's a completely different debate. Let's assume for the reason that you can't win that debate, right? And so now we're just talking to Rinyald about this part specifically. Not, well, Biden was a senator, so he's not allowed to do it, and Trump was a president, and he's not. We're talking specifically about this portion, right? Now, what I'm reading from that isn't an example of him showing people that document, the specifics of it or anything like that. I don't know. Nonetheless, we have that exact scenario with Biden. We have it. Biden's literally reading from a document that he says is probably classified. Skipping over a few words doesn't mean that the rest of that document wasn't classified.
Well, no, it's
he
like
knew it was
over
classified.
Whole passages in the notebook. So he said, like, this passage of the notebook that contains classified information, so we skip over this passage. That's what was described in her report.
Again, if I have 4 pages that are marked classified because there's only one paragraph in there that's classified, can I show the other pages to people and say, hey, I don't think this is classified? No, the whole document's
legally no.
You probably
legally no,
but it doesn't. It also doesn't prove.
No, it's not probably legally. You can't.
It doesn't. That's irrelevant though. It doesn't show intent that you're willingly distributing classified information. If you only believe
it's not irrelevant at all.
That is relevant.
Legally, you can't.
The whole point is willingness.
Would Joe Biden have known that if there's a portion of a paragraph or whatever that's classified, then the whole document is? Would Joe Biden have known that? As a politician who's been there for 47 years.
I don't know, but there's the idea that there's some sort of double standard in that the fact that you couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt, but you could for Trump.
Wait, reasonable doubt? You've been in for 47 years and you've never been read in the indoc for like security clearance handling of classified material? Dude, I wasn't even.
That, like,
I was before I even hit the fleet. I got read in for that shit.
It's my
because I had a clearance before I got to the fleet.
I know your mic is a lot louder. It's my impression that
I'm sorry. I'm
drawn up by
there we go.
officials are separate than transcriptions of in notebooks by a particular person. It feels like the procedures for handling that would be very different, or there would at least be a reason to believe that they would be handled different.
Now wait, y'all. Now you're making I told Grumble like saying it's confidential, which is the lowest form of classification. Like that's sort of red herring. Now you're doing the same. Well, the different types of classification. No, it would still be the same, and Joe Biden would know that. Furthermore, I have a question for Ryan here. Isn't it your belief that Trump's more cognitively declined than Joe Biden?
Yeah, but I don't believe that.
I would say he's at least he has at least as many suspicious traits of cognitive decline. Yeah.
So, given that, if Herr said that it was a reason not to charge Biden because of his cognitive decline, wouldn't that mean you're also against charging Trump for the same reason if you think he's equal or worse?
Wait, you still talking to me?
Wow, I hear the crickets.
What do you mean by charging?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know about the her thing. I haven't actually read that specific claim about why Biden was in charge. So I mean, if that's the case, then I mean, if that's the reason, then if there was an identical scenario with Trump that that he also doesn't meet those requirements for, then perhaps But he certainly wouldn't be fit for presidential office.
Zach, did you want to say something?
He certainly wouldn't be fit to be president, and neither would Joe Biden in that case, right?
You have to pick your pony, Ryan. You got to pick one.
No, I don't. Wait, I can say they both shouldn't be president.
Did you? Okay.
Oh, I'm talking about the argument. You got to.
You want to say something?
I think Zach wants to say something. Guys.
Zach would like to say something, please.
Go ahead, Zach.
Sarah, thanks for having me on. I'm just over leftist thinking. Have a good night.
Love you, Zach.
Good night, Mr. Zach. Still looking forward to next time we talk, pull up that source where you're going to demonstrate that person was actually being spoken for and didn't actually just agree to say whatever was said. And if you can provide that, I'd be super interested to see it. I don't think you're going to because I don't think it's what happened. But it's sweet that you're standing up for that person. You know, recognizing them.
Hey Zach, let's see if you could get that source before Ryan could get the source that all the people that were against statues being torn down were racist. I'll wait for your source on that too, Ryan, right?
I think that one's more reasonable.
Oh, you don't need proof. You just intuit it. Yeah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, right. So disingenuous, it's ridiculous, man. Hey, Ryan,
so there's all he would have to do is find one statement. One statement from this one person. All he would have to do is find one statement from this one person, right? That's very different.
Ryan, you tell me, how do you lose a debate with someone that doesn't have any contentions and you have all of them? How exactly do you actually do that structurally? Yeah. He didn't have any points and you had all the points and you still lost. How did that work?
Wait, who are you talking about, Rob or Zach?
You brought all the points up. Every single one of them. That was you. Like they
were all listed from Rob's document.
Points. Yeah.
Ryan,
but they were all your contentions.
Did you just like say that Zach had no points, or what?
What he didn't. Yeah.
Why did you mention his name?
He just asserted without any evidence.
No, I'm talking about Rob versus Ryan. Versus Ryan.
Zach asserted without any evidence that the person at the DNC was basically being tokenized and that they were being talked over. They didn't actually get to speak their mind. And what really happened is that someone went up there and spoke for them, which is true, but he has no reason to believe that they didn't agree to that setup. And it's just kind of an assertion. And I'm asking him if he can demonstrate. I'd be interested to see. And I would condemn it. I even said I would condemn them doing that if he wanted to go up and speak and they didn't let him. I would say that that's a problem.
Listen, I hate to do this, but Sarah, I'm going to have to get going. I got to talk to my audience a little, and it's fucking 4:40 for me.
4:30 in the morning.
So I'm gonna have to get going. I'm sorry to do it. I'm having fun, but I gotta go. So
I love you, Rob.
Rob, before you go, real quick, I won't.
Oh my God.
Done, Rob.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Ryan, real quick.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I just wanted to check the study I posted in the back. You can get back to me on this, but I'm just wondering if this is the one that you're saying is a bad study or whatever. This is a Black representation in primary care physician workforce and its association with population life expectancy and mortality rates in the U.S.
Yeah, I think what you saw, I think that's the one. And they tried to replicate this, and it turns out that if you factor in birth weight, that it zeroes out.
Really?
Yes.
Zach, it looked like you were typing. Did you have something to say next?
So it's not actually anything that's wrong with this study, then, right? Because this study specifically says that it could, that like it acknowledges that the despair or the reasoning here isn't like necessarily attributed. Like it could be other causes like that, right? It mentions.
Well, no, because the conclusion that the study is reaching is that because black people that went to black doctors for children for birth had better outcomes, but no, it turned out that it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with the birth weights. And
so in the abstract, it specifically says, however, it is unclear whether greater black representation within the PCP workforce is associated with improved health outcomes among black individuals. So it's specifically saying that there could be other things, right?
I mean, I think any study says any study that you have could say there could be other explanations. But
so why did you dismiss this study then?
Because the study was inaccurate, right? Because the variable that they were seeking to isolate, that they were seeking to question whether or not black people that went to black hospitals had better outcomes, it turned out that there was other variables that explained that wasn't the case.
Well, it turned out there are other variables that explained that that potentially, according to you, that there were other variables that explained that, but that doesn't mean that the original claim wasn't also true.
So I just want to be clear. If I commission a study and that study says that I don't know, Democrats are 90 times more likely to molest children, right? And then I just put a little sentence at the end of it, say there could be other factors that explain this. And it turns out it's like, yes, you specifically searched for Democrats that were convicted of sexual assault against children, right? I'd say, but nonetheless, my study was accurate. I admitted that there could be other factors.
Yeah, I don't think that what you just described would make it through the peer review process, but I think that this study would.
The peer review process is shit, regardless.
I mean, according to you, but I mean, like, why would we take Rob's word for that? Like, Rob, what experience do you have with the peer review process?
Well, do you want to see James Lindsay and the things he sent through that made it through peer
James
review?
Lindsay's a clown, yeah.
Oh yeah, and yeah, as a clown, he had all sorts of papers make it through peer review.
Excuse me.
So are you aware of like all the strategies they use to make that happen, though?
So you're saying that peer review is able to be gamed? That even a clown would be able to game it?
In some cases. A couple of the papers that they pushed through got through. Yes, a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them they got through were just absurd they were absurd sounding, but were actually done like meticulously by all the standards. So they were like, wow, that looks really silly, but it's actually like done through all of the proper methodological
I'm sorry,
points.
Sarah,
So like
you had something to say.
I was going to allow you your final thoughts, Rob, before you go.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. It was good being here. Sorry it got onto racism because Ryan said something that was objectively stupid, that you couldn't be racist against white people. I think that I proved my point. I gave Ryan every advantage in this debate. I gave him my entire notes. He had a month to prepare for it. He was going to show that I engaged in misinformation. He did very poorly. He continued to say dumber and dumber things all night, but it was still fun. It was fun watching him dangle around. And of course, he spurgs out when he knows he's on his back foot and won't engage in hypotheticals and things of that. Doesn't even know what per capita means. It's good stuff. So anyways, good time, Sarah. Always a fantastic time over here. I'm going to talk to my audience a little before I head to bed, but anytime you'd have me back, I'd be honored. I really enjoyed myself. So
good seeing you, Rob. Thank you for the evening.
Thank you, guys.
Rob,
I'd like a moment to respond to all the allegations laid
Nobody
out
needs.
I think
you don't need to respond to anything. You had.
Well, that's okay. Well, I wasn't actually talking to you, so
yeah, but you had plenty of time and you failed. So.
Well, that's okay that you feel that way.
Everyone feels that way.
If you don't mind, I'm actually getting pooped out myself because it is 4:30 in the morning. Nate sent in the big five and said pepperoni, olives, and pineapple.
That's communism.
Pineapple. I don't know about the rest.
Yeah, pineapple.
I honestly like Canadian bacon, black olives, and tomatoes, and that's my thing. I don't know why, but
if you're not,
I just swap it for regular bacon, and I would agree.
You're a communist. If you're not on the mushroom onion bacon train, you're an actual communist.
I wouldn't mind
actual
mushrooms.
communist.
I don't mind
mushrooms. Actual,
if they're like
avowed communist.
Yeah. All right.
You just haven't discovered it yet.
I am so pooped out. It's like I've been up for 20 hours.
That's
so tired. So if you don't mind, gentlemen, I'd love to make our final thoughts. This panel was so freaking lit and so fun and rowdy, and it was a really interesting topic that maneuvered around current events and past events and all sorts of societal issues and politics and economics and all of those things, and I loved it. And Kissy Cat,
You got to ban Kissy Cat.
I will never ever. Actually, who said that? Was that you, Rumple?
Yeah, that was Rumple.
Hi,
Go ahead.
Rumple,
Yeah.
for suggesting such stupid, foolish things. Kissy
I know.
Cat.
Usually that's my job.
Kissy Cat is a much loved wrench here, and you actually
runs the whole
just
space.
recommended we ban her. Fuck that.
Plus, she's just an awesome person. So
She gave him money to eat a crayon before, Sarah. So
Well,
it's a friend thing, you know.
No,
That's also
I don't
pretty
care.
funny.
Yeah.
Listen, Kissy Cat is my wrench, and to suggest I should ever ban her, you have to be some kind of stupid. All right, to the panel, Calvin, go ahead with your final thoughts, please, and let's make them fast. I'm tired.
Certainly. Thanks for allowing me up to talk. I wanted to chime in on document issue, but there'll always be another time. So I look forward to it. Again, thanks.
Thank you, Calvin. I appreciate you. Based
Thanks,
Tweaker, you make me very nervous. Go ahead.
my final thought is, Ryan, you actually did pretty good tonight, considering everything. I got to give you credit. That's it.
That was fine.
Fair.
Come on. Unique, Zach, do you need time to put together a final thought?
The fact that your party uses people in other ethnicities. Joe Biden has said, "You're not black if you don't vote for me." Kamala jailed most blacks in San Francisco, and now using people like me for votes.
Yeah, very disturbing. It's funny how everything only works one way, isn't it? Zach, thank you for coming to the panel this evening. We appreciate having you and your opinions and thoughts. Rinyald, to you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It was a lot of fun. I thought the racism talk was wholly and completely intolerable, though. So it is what it is, because I couldn't agree with the 1350ing, and I also couldn't agree with the white people not being able to be racist, but I just didn't care enough to make any comments.
What?
I think Rob won, which is kind of sad, because I think the anti-establishment people usually just rely on people either not knowing how the process works or relying on gaps in our knowledge about certain things about the process. I really wish that I could talk to Rob for a little bit longer about the classified info, because the more I read into Trump's, the more I realize how fucking crazy this was. But yeah, I had fun. Follow me at Rinyald on TikTok and YouTube and Twitch, I believe, and I appreciate you having me on.
Always. Rinyald, I wouldn't be surprised if you reached out to Rob. I'm sure he'd love to have that conversation.
I'm sure too, but I got to read like a 500-page report and this 60-page, and I got a lot of reading to do.
Trouble, right?
At the very least, I would reach out to him on X and just let him know you'd be interested in having that conversation. It doesn't sound like you're trying to debate. It sounds like you're trying to be inquisitive, right?
More or less.
Yeah, I just reach out to him. He's very easy to work with.
Probably will.
Animated effigy to you, sir.
Thanks for having me on as always. And I'll leave with just a comment on a very specific point that we left like way back in the dust, but it's been bugging on my mind. It's a well-established fact why most of the Confederate statues were placed in the early 1900s all the way through the 1920s. Most of these statues even had dedications, plaques, or things put on them that had entire speeches about the white race and things like that. We know why. We know why it coincided with the rise of Jim Crow. Those specific statues irk the people who live around them now, because they are the kind of people that those statues said wanted to keep them underfoot. It's really easy to understand. It's not like denying history. And if you want to take it down and put it in a museum, no one would fucking give a care. But it's every generation's right to take the shit around them and move it, no matter what it is, and change it. It's our world, not the people of the past's world. It's our fucking world, so we can change it. Thank you for having me on.
What about the other people in the world? Trippycast to you, sir.
I gotta thank you, Sarah. You gave me. I'm glad that I can restream from your chat, because I got a lot of views and stuff. So thank you very much, Ryan. You always know how to take a joke. Basic, you guys, everybody else, you guys are great. What we didn't get to, though, sadly, was the answer on whether or not the Dukes of Hazzard was racist. And I'm disappointed because that was the title of the show. Y'all have a great night. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
And Ryan, to you, of course.
Epic. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun. Obviously, I had a great time. Talking to Rob is always educational to some degree. I want to speak briefly to one other thing Zach said about tokenizing people. I mean, I think there's a reason that people like Candace Owens are elevated on the right. It's not because they have amazing, insightful ideas. It is because part of her product is her blackness and her being a token of the right. And I'll leave that one at that. I think Rob made an interesting point, which I agree is a good debate strategy. Where earlier he was giving someone advice about how to kind of win on the simplest point possible. I think that's something that Rob often tries to do. For me, when I'm having these conversations, and this is arguably one of my biggest flaws, I am trying to gain more clarity most of the time than I am just trying to own my opponent and win on every specific point. I'm more interested about what the actual reality is at the end of the day. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, and which is why initially in the conversation, I think the first half of the conversation, I would argue I won that, and then the latter half Rob won because the first half I was actually walking through, pointing to more nuances and finding more clarity. And what was happening is things Rob's points look more absurd on their face when you actually break them down, because what he was arguing is that Clinton's team hiring a law firm, which hired a company that hired Christopher Steele, who then used Donchenko as a source, that this is Russian collusion. But Donald Trump Jr. having a secret meeting with Russian government officials in Trump Tower to get dirt on Hillary, that's not Russian collusion. And another point that came up was later when we talked about racism after an extended conversation, I ended up being on the back foot where I'm having to defend against people who are saying it is somehow racist to put the first black woman on the Supreme Court, which I think is, again, absurd on its face. And I think when we really bring that clarity in, it shows how absurd some of the conclusions that are being drawn here are. I'm Ryan, Radical Coder. I think learning is radical, and I am only 5 subs away from 800, which is a super exciting moment. Oh, actually, 4 subs away. I take that back. I bet there's 4 people watching right now who are not subscribed to me but should be, and I highly recommend you come over there, and we'll do some fun stuff. I'm going on a WIC panel tomorrow night to talk about the recent Supreme Court ruling on injunctions, so that should be an interesting one. Sarah, love you so much. We have some conversations to have, by the way, whenever you have time offline. I have some cool stuff to show you, but we'll
definitely
walk
not
through
for
that.
the next 10 hours.
No worries. Yeah, no rush, but yeah. You get some rest. I also need some rest. So, but yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Good. And thank you to everyone, not only for the debate this evening with Ryan and Rob. I knew they were going to be incredibly respectful to each other. I was very excited to host this. I didn't think that I would actually need to intervene too much. And I gave you guys that leeway. I specifically said I was going to stay out of your way because you both are very well-seasoned debaters. You know what you're doing and how to do it. And for me to be here is just merely a safety measure. I am the safety net. Outside of that, I was planning on shutting down 3 hours ago, and then somehow we're still here. 2 White Claws and a bowl of cereal later. I don't know how it happened, but ladies and gentlemen, shit happens sometimes. It's now almost 5. Hi, Umbreon. Hello, baby. Somehow it's almost 5 in the morning, and the only times we actually do typically go this late is if the conversation is actually moving well and the chat's enjoying it and all of those things. So there were no real winners tonight except for the chat. As always, you folks, you, the viewer, are always the winner in my book. You win every debate, every argument, every panel, every whatever. It's all to you. Anyways, I love you all. Tune in tomorrow night. Mod Monday is all set up, ready to go. Outside of that, no, not tomorrow night. Tonight. It's tonight. All right, fuck off.
Captain's Log, June 2nd, 2836. After 27 years of war between the Degen Coomers and the Sainthood Slayers, a new hope arises. As the battlefield lay weaponized, locked and loaded for destruction, negotiations for a peace treaty are in transition. The moderator has arrived at Station 42. Can this war be ended? Will the Coomers and Slayers find a middle ground?
Abort mission. I repeat, abort mission. Negotiation failure. Abort mission.
Heavy bogey 6+, low orbit over grid 15-2. No joy, Yashiman. Then go to your window and look up their biggest tracking asteroid. Copy, Yashiman. Still blind. Got some kind of system-wide crash in the defense grid. I want to track yourself right goddamn now, because we got Boku inbound, and they're not carrying flow. Wait one, Yashiman. We don't have flow.